Please be seated. Good evening. I'm Councillor Julie Hart and I would like to welcome you to this full council meeting. There are no scheduled fire drills tonight, so in the event of a fire alarm sounding, please leave the building via the main spiral staircase and through the main entrance doors. Once outside, please turn left and make your way to the fire assembly point located beyond the multi-storey car park on Exchange Road. If you are unable to use the stairs, please wait in the chamber and you will be guided by a member of staff to the evacuation lift. I am pleased to announce that this meeting will be recorded and uploaded to the Council's YouTube site. You should be aware that the Council is a data controller under the Data Protection Act. Data collected during a website will be retained in accordance with the Council's published policy. Any members of the public seated in the public gallery will be filmed by the automated camera system and your image may be captured. Therefore, by entering the meeting room, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of these images and sound recordings for webcasting and/or training purposes. Members are reminded to take notice of what is displayed on the screens in the room, as these show what is being recorded. It is best that members remain seated when speaking, as the cameras are currently set to capture you in a seated position. However, if you do stand, please look at the TV screens to ensure that your head has been captured. Please do not move the microphones too close. You can request to speak by pressing the button with the face on it, and the microphone will go blue. The order of speakers will be controlled by Democratic Services. The microphone will go green when you are live. Members have received an electronic copy of the relevant paperwork for this meeting. The public agenda for this meeting is available on the Council's website. We will now pause for a moment of reflection in respect of the innocent lives lost in Israel and Gaza. Please stand. Thank you. Are there any apologies for absence?
Councillor Pendlington. Do you ask Councillor Crawley?
Yes. Also, Councillor Morris, please.
Councillors' interests notified in advance of the meeting are set out from page 5 in the supplementary agenda of the order paper. Are there any further interests councillors wish to declare?
Councillor Ayling.
Councillor Ayling.
Ali, sorry.
Oh, sorry, Ali. Apologies.
Thank you, Madam. In respect of motion 2 and motion 3, personal interest as a member of West Sussex County Council, and please accept my apologies not sending in advance.
Councillor Crowe.
Councillor Crowe.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, apologies, it wasn't submitted earlier. Agenda item, sorry, not motion 3, personal interest of a member of West Sussex County Council, and also declare personal interest on the amendment on motion 2, as it references West Sussex County Council. So that is as a member of West Sussex County Council again. Thank you.
Yes.
It's your turn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not sure if this has come through on time, and I apologise if it hasn't, but I'd like to admit that I'm a West Sussex County Councillor, and also I'm a volunteer at the hospice. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, that has been received. Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Lanza.
Sorry. I'd like to declare a personal interest as a member of West Sussex County Council in the amendment to notice of motion 2.
Thank you. The minutes of the last 2 full council meetings held on the 19th of July 2023 and the 19th of September 2023 appear on pages 5 to 30 and pages 31 to 34 of the agenda respectively. Are both sets of minutes agreed? Firstly, I would like to formally welcome Ian Duke to his first full council as our Chief Executive. Welcome. I will now provide you with a mayoral update. The last couple of months have seen a wide variety of events around the town in what is still a very, very busy diary. I've attended the Hawth on a few occasions to support our local dementia group, as well as the Disabled Fun Day and the Junior Citizens Week, both of which were arranged by Crawley Borough Council. Just last week, I helped launch Black History Month at Crawley Museum and attended the concert to celebrate 50 years of the town twinning with Dorsten in Germany. Now it seems to be onwards and upwards towards Christmas, where I hope to continue meeting many more of the residents of Crawley. Is there any communication from officers? No? As you will see from the order paper on page 7, there are some cabinet member announcements. I will take them in the order that they are listed. Councillor Noyce, Councillor Irvine, and finally Councillor Narboz. There will be combined maximum of 10 minutes for each of these communications in total. Councillor Noyce.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is an update on the home upgrade grant funding. Residents in Crawley can now get free upgrades to make their homes more energy efficient, which can be worth up to £38,000 per household. Crawley Borough Council, along with 23 other councils and regions, successfully bid for 41.4 million in funding from the government. This money comes from the Home Upgrade Fund, grant fund, and aims to keep households on low incomes which don't have gas central heating, and also for people who earn less than £31,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Irvine.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got 2 announcements which I will keep brief. Firstly, may I remind Council that the dedication to the late Raj Sharma, twice Mayor and esteemed former colleague, will take place on 3rd of November at 11:30 at the new development on the corner of Brighton Road and Stonefield Close in Southgate. I'm sure everyone will recognise that Raj wasn't just a very active and committed borough councillor, but he also did an incredible amount of work for young people in Crawley over many years. Secondly, it has been commented to me about the great communication between Crawley Homes and residents recently at Milton Mount and Forge Wood. Comments which I will pass on to the head of Crawley Homes, and I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank all the Pound Hill North councillors for their constructive efforts over such issues as Milton Mount flats and issues that have arisen there. So thank you for that. Soon we'll be reviewing how Crawley Homes communicates with tenants and leaseholders. So if you have any positive or negative experiences, please can you feed them back to the head of Crawley Homes. It could be of great help in seeking to improve how we do things. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nawaz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just wanted to update Council on Invest in Skills for Crawley Townsfront project. We, with myself and Councillor Jones and Councillor Noyes, we visited Crawley College recently, and we were quite pleased to see that the progress has been made on that, where Crawley College actually, as part of Institute of Technology, has partnered with BT to provide a sort of new state-of-the-art immersive spaces to take learning to the next level. The college will be opening 4 new immersive spaces, 5G enabled, interactive simulation experience, which have been designed and developed by BT and Immersive Interactive Limited, and combine 360 video and computer generated content with lights, sounds and even smells. And I was over there, I can tell you that. I was one of the experiences that taken me to one of the chairlifts in London. I thought I was actually moving as well, so it was really good. They will introduce this augmented reality, virtual reality, extended reality to simulate real-life environments to enhance and expand learning opportunities for students. And I'm sure you will appreciate that this will help and empower and upskill our Crawley's local workforce and boost local Crawley businesses in these sectors by helping them to recruit locally. That's a really good news for our Crawley, to upskill our workforce. Thank you.
We will now move to item 5, public question time, which is set for 30 minutes. I will briefly explain the procedure. I will invite each person in turn to the table at the front of the public seating area to ask their question. Please state your name, which ward you live in, and then ask your question. Please remember that questions cannot repeat any question that has already been asked either tonight or within the last 6 months. I will then invite the most appropriate councillor to reply to your question. You may then ask one supplementary question which should relate to your original question or the response given to it. Is there anybody in? Would you like to step forward, sir? Sorry?
Just ask him to state his name and
Yeah.
ward.
Thank you. Good evening, sir. Can I ask you to state your name and your ward, please?
It's Alistair Parr and Three Bridges. I've been talking to the council lately about the antisocial behaviour, in particular the footpath in and around Geraint Thomas House. Since it's reopened the footpath, we've had an awful lot of problems, which is blighting the people that live there, some of which is down to A2 Dominion. But there are 1 or 2 things that could be done, small things to start with, and it's the litter. The litter's being cleared off the path regularly now, but there's been no bin replaced after it was burnt down. And there are 2 places, one outside the district heat building, which is inside the fence line of the old town hall, which is full of litter, and also the corner of the yard at the back of the town hall that the council use is absolutely full of litter as well. And the other point was the concrete blocks that are still there, which make very nice seats for street drinkers, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask either Councillor Khan or Noyce if they wish to reply?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm ever so sorry I've not received the email, but I will look into it and I will deal with it accordingly. That's all I can say, because I'm so sorry I've not seen the email. Okay, all right.
Councillors, because the Grand Thomas House comes under Three Bridges, not Northgate. I don't know if that makes a difference. Oh, right, okay, sorry. Yeah.
I've not seen that, but I will liaise with my colleagues. Okay. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, we did receive your email, and I'm already talking to officers about it, and we have been given some contact details for A2 Dominion, and I'm dealing with one of the officers. We'll be in touch with you because you sent an email, I think, a couple of days ago. So I've already got all the emails, to contact details for the A2 Dominion, and officers are looking into it to address your concerns, and we will be in writing you as well, or I'll be in touch with you with answers what we can do. And obviously, as Councillor Khan says, from antisocial behaviour side of things, they will be in touch with you as well on that. Yeah, thank you.
Do you have a supplementary question, sir? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, thank you. We'll now deal with agenda item 6, consideration of full council recommendations and call-in decisions. There are 2 recommendations under this item, both arising from the Cabinet meeting on the 27th of September 2023. Recommendation 1, 2023-2024 Budget Monitoring, Quarter 1, Minute 6, starting on page 79. Councillor Jones, please introduce this recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will outline the areas we'll be seeking agreement tonight, and then we'll give a brief overview to Council on our financial position. There are some capital items that need to come forward now. We need to add the second phase of council home decarbonisation money in order to match the funding from government as their condition for bringing this forward. This is very positive news, and as we are one of a small number of authorities who've been able to get both phases, I think this is a real sign of how successful the government recognises that the first phase work the council did actually was. It certainly enabled us to address a large amount of our older Crawley home stock, which was often not very energy efficient. And this, of course, has real benefits for lower energy costs for our tenants, more of who now will be getting this investment. We also have to pay for a new lift in the Horth. We have to replace it, as not having this lift would otherwise have serious implications for the shows that the theatre can put on. The disabled facility grants money is basically passporting the government grants we were given for that purpose straight towards the budget we spent from, and there is a further £6 million which will go in a budget that will allow us to acquire developments which come up within the borough, so hopefully we can all agree with those parts of the recommendation too. Let's address the council's financial situation. The General Fund has a predicted overspend of 1.9 million, which will result in a General Fund balance of 3.8 million if no corrective action is taken. Now, while this is concerning, I do not want anyone to try and suggest that this is due to poor financial decisions. It is not. Since this Labour administration took control in 2014, we have made accumulated annual savings year on year on the council's budget of just under £8 million annually. Now, this is on top of what was taken away in the years immediately before that. To also frame this, the National Conservative government has virtually taken away all of the funding that councils used to receive from them to support the running of local services. The Revenue Support Grant and other associated grants that national government currently give this council, my finance officers have advised me, stands today at 8.6% of what it was in the last year of the Labour government in 2010. So that's over 9/10 of it just gone with nothing given by the government to replace it, and councils have been expected to deal with it. That is a shocking position for this current government to put local governments, councils in, and a real indication of why so much is wrong in this country at the moment, in my opinion. Returning to this year, Madam Mayor, the main reason for our difficulties is a predicted temporary overspend for temporary accommodation of £1.9 million. The situation is not sustainable. Despite this council having an enviable record for housing development, the impact of water neutrality imposed by Natural England and the use of local hotels by the Home Office means that the council is already facing huge housing pressures. Our total spend on temporary accommodation this year is forecast to be £5.6 million because of all this, including that £1.9 million overspend. We are in a frustrating position where if it were not for the rising rates of people presenting to the council as homeless, who we have a duty to provide temporary accommodation for as the local housing authority, then the council's financial position would otherwise be relatively sound. Officers are bringing forward alternative measures which will reduce our reliance on nightly paid accommodation, which is very costly. This will form part of a wider set of work that will look at all aspects of the council's revenue and expenditure. This doesn't mean, however, that the government shouldn't be recognising the serious position many local authorities like Crawley are under with temporary housing costs, and they should be providing additional financial support. But at the moment, unfortunately, that doesn't appear to be forthcoming. But in those areas that have significant issues of deprivation and high levels of private sector rental rather than home ownership, which is Crawley, it should not be surprising that increasingly unaffordable private rents are forcing many people out of that and into a safety net. This makes me very angry because the situation is largely of the government's own making. The failure to fund and support council affordable housing has created a shortage in itself, and Liz Truss's economically disastrous budget, which increased mortgage rates so substantially, has forced many landlords to exit the rental markets, causing evictions and forcing up rents even further for what remains. The work to be completed on future budget strategy includes a review of earmarked reserves with the aim of identifying funding to reduce the pressure on the general fund, and a review of the capital programme to reassess affordability and to identify any possible means of reducing the pressure on the general fund. The housing revenue account has a predicted overspend of £1.7 million. This is mainly due to £2.4 million of additional expenditure on reactive repairs, the pay award of £100,000 and increased void costs of £120,000. In this latter case, this is because more properties are being handed back in sometimes much worse condition than usual before now. And as well as this, inflation is greatly increasing the cost of materials over and above what they would have been when the budgets were first set. Part of our review of the general fund going forward will mean that if we can achieve more of our repairs as part of the planned maintenance programme rather than reactive, this should also allow us to make some savings in the price we pay for materials. It also demonstrates our record as a council, as a social landlord, in making sure that those repairs happen when they're needed and our tenants are identifying that there's an issue that needs resolving. Given concerns elsewhere, even in some other parts of West Sussex, about the maintenance and standards of council homes, I feel this is strong evidence that we are ensuring high standards are the priority. We remain committed as a council, Madam Mayor, to ensure that our tenants come first and repairs are prioritised, and this spending reflects that sheer commitment. There's a significant capital slippage to next year, unfortunately. A significant reason for this is due to the schemes that we had being delayed due to water neutrality planning restrictions, which we're doing our best to address, sometimes under very difficult circumstances. This is as frustrating for us as it is unfortunate, but we will press forwards despite this. There will be an all-members seminar in November where further details on the budget will be set out for budget setting next year, and I hope that all members' questions will be able to be fully answered.
30 seconds, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would conclude by saying that all of these points, in my view, demonstrate that we continue to be a dynamic council, clearly working to deliver the best possible services locally, adapting to new challenges as and when they arise under extremely difficult circumstances. Thank you.
Councillor Nawaz, I believe you are seconding the recommendation, and in doing so, please confirm if you are wishing to reserve your right to speak later during the debate.
Yes, please, yeah. I'd like to reserve the right to speak later if needed.
I will now open up the debate to the floor. Councillor Crowe.
Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Conservative Group will be supporting recommendation one, recognising that those actions that are being undertaken are wise in the circumstances. I, along with everybody, recognise the difficulties that we have in local government as a whole. I don't quite necessarily agree with all what Councillor Jones said about the history lesson, but there is no denying that there are unique pressures that cannot necessarily be solved locally or indeed be solved nationally. A lot of the reasonings behind high inflation are international factors that are beyond the control of all of us. It is going to be very challenging going forward. There's no two ways about that. But just because we have the known difficulties that we do have, it doesn't mean we should take our eye off the ball anywhere else. And we still need to be bearing down on budgets and looking to be as efficient as possible wherever we can in all parts of the council. One thing that was raised with me by colleagues who were on OSC was the £400 overspend on electricity in our premises, and apparently it was not easily understood as to exactly which buildings, that, as I understand it, which buildings the overspend actually could be attributed to. It seemed quite bizarre. The chart, the table in the cabinet papers does show an overspend across the board, and I recognise there are those inflationary pressures. But like I say, we do need to sort of do what we can to mitigate whatever. And I welcome what the leader said about looking at options to provide additional housing so that we're not so reliant on temporary accommodation. That is not only the right thing to do, but it will potentially save us money as well. And yes, what the water neutrality issue is unhelpful. It would be good to get it resolved. The nutrient neutrality issue has been resolved, even though some political parties complained about the outcome of that, and I believe certainly at parliamentary level they did. But it would be very helpful if we could get the water neutrality issue resolved as well. I'm hoping that we're not in 114 territory just yet, but it will require members to exercise restraint to help to ensure that we are not there going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lanza.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, just referring to the revenue budget, we cannot escape the fact, despite everything that Councillor Jones has said, that the all 8 cabinet portfolios show an overspend, albeit one of them by just £1,000. So it's almost 7 out of 8. And really, building on Councillor Crow's remarks, it is true that some of the overspends do warrant lobbying of central government to assist with that expenditure. But the net result of this is that the council's general fund reserve, I think at about £3.5 million, is not that much above the absolute minimum safety level of £3 million. So it does feel somewhat precarious, that level of general fund reserve, looking to the future. I will acknowledge as well that the total overspend of £2.9 million on the revenue budget currently is overwhelmingly that is £2 million worth attributable to housing, and particularly to temporary accommodation in respect of homelessness. And referring to the leader's letter, I think, or whatever, correspondence to central government, it was right, and I would have done the same, to flag certain possibilities with central government at this stage. And I make particular reference to the obligations that will be coming our way, potentially in respect of the Chagossian community and their rights, those who don't currently live in the United Kingdom. And I'm going to observe again, as I did at the Overview and Scrutiny Commission, that what we have here was an injustice committed at a national level by a national government, which therefore requires national solutions, and that includes funding, support and other resources, because no single local authority could deal with that particular situation on their own. I think all of that is absolutely true. However, given the, and I say the word precarious again, state of general fund reserves, they're quite near the margin. And I note as well, I think I'm right in saying that the member budget seminar that was due has been postponed. I think when, yeah, that needs a particular focus on savings opportunities and involving all members and indeed the wider public in suggestions for savings, sustainable savings that might be achieved, as well as the continued lobbying of the central government on the issues that I have mentioned. Thank you.
Do you wish to speak? Okay, thank you. There are no further speakers. Councillor Jones, do you wish to use your right to reply? And in doing so, please formally move the recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be relatively brief. I want to assure councillors we are being efficient. We have been efficient. I set out earlier on the amounts that we have saved since 2014, and I'm not even counting the savings that took place under the previous administration, because as far as I'm concerned, the thumbscrews went on government by this government on local councils from day one, from 2010 onwards, and the need to save was very much apparent even for then. But the problem we have is that year on year there is only so far you can push. There's only so far to cut. When you cut to the bone, you've cut to the bone. The only thing you can cut further is through. And I think what really concerns me now is that we've worked through all the efficiencies. I've been through with the officers this year, last year, all the potential savings. We're now at the point where there's nothing else to cut. We're looking, the only things will be frontline services, and that's desperately concerning. We don't want to do that, and we'll do everything we can to avoid that. But members will be aware that this is a challenging situation. It's an unusual situation in Crawley Borough Council's history, but the constant starving of funding that used to come from us nationally that I outlined earlier on was always going to have an impact. I'm absolutely confident we're going to see many local councils start to fall over now through no fault of their own. But I do not think, just to address this, I'm confident that we won't be in a Section 114 bankruptcy event or declaration ourselves unless we're hit with a very large unexpected bill, such as, thank you for the example, Councillor Lanza, but such as several hundred Chagosians arriving in Crawley, and our costs rising in that respect, or if temporary accommodation needs get any worse, and there's no guarantee that they won't. This is the whole point I'm trying to make. The government has to listen. It has to listen now, and it has to step in. We have some unique situations here. Yes, water neutrality was mentioned by Councillor Crowe, I think it was earlier on. We have all the pressures of a major urban area, a major metropolitan borough, frankly, when it comes to temporary accommodation. We're the only one that's been affected by water neutrality, and we can't build, or we've got serious difficulties with it. One of the reasons why we're overspent, Councillor Lanza, in all the portfolio areas, is inflation. I'm afraid it's not been due to any profligacy on our part. I can assure you. The £400,000 overspend that's been referred to, our understanding, now the officers had a chance to look at it, is that this is attributable to very significant rising energy costs. The lighting in our communal halls, in our council flats, is largely attributable to this significant overspend, and there's been some recent changes that brought that to light. I think just also it's important to mention that Councillor Lanza mentioned the £3 million amount, which is the target for reserves that we set ourselves. It is not the statutory minimum, and there are quite a few councils, including a couple locally, that are well below that. But we want to keep to the 3 million, and this year, according to our current financial projections, we certainly will. And it is right to be prudent, because we do need something in case there are exceptional events. But the only problem we have here at Crawley Borough Council is that with the situation with the large number of people in the hotels that the Home Office have put, the potential Chagossian influx, other issues, we have an awful lot of potentially unexpected events that could come in and cause this council great financial difficulties. And that's why, again, I repeat my call. I've written to government. No doubt I'll have to write to government on other issues, and particularly the temporary accommodation issue is starting to trouble many borough councils and second-tier authorities right across the country. Thank you.
I call for a vote on the substantive recommendation. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Recommendation 2. Future acquisitions for affordable housing delivery, Part B. Minute 10, starting on page 82. I am aiming to hold the debate on this recommendation in open session, even though it relates to a Part B exempt report, unless I hear any objection to this approach. That being agreed, please remember to not talk about the locations or the related finances. Councillor Jones, please introduce this recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think this is a very positive recommendation which will help us unlock several housing developments that are being done privately, which are described as turnkey developments in the report. And these will be essentially for laymen and laypersons, I should say. These will be where the council can buy into a development at below market rates and pick up properties utilising our water neutrality credits that the council have acquired on through the water efficiencies that we have installed in some of our own council housing stock. And this will allow these private developments that would otherwise not happen to come forward. As we're borrowing on the council's housing revenue account, which remains comparatively healthy due to its size, this will allow us to bring forward quite a large number of new Crawley council homes in various parts of the borough, which we would otherwise not be able to get. Something that's become increasingly important as development land has become scarcer within the borough's boundaries. And this is obviously building on our already excellent reputation for a local authority our size in bringing forward council housing and other social landlord housing. And this will not only bring real benefits for many of our local residents, in the long term it will help us to continue and grow and provide the council housing for our residents. And so I wholeheartedly recommend this to the council.
Thank you. Councillor Irvine, I believe you're seconding the recommendation, and in doing so, please confirm if you are wishing to reserve your right to speak later during the debate.
I'll speak now on that.
Thank you.
Brilliant. I'll be brief, because I think Councillor Jones has covered most of this, and I'd like to say first of all that I'm very pleased that the Overall Scrutiny Commission gave this their full support. It's always good to have that support. And without going into the details you described, Madam Mayor, I think the important thing about this is that it will enable us to be more agile and nimble as a council as opportunities arise. We've heard about the pressures of homelessness. I mean, apparently £2.4 billion was spent across the country on homelessness last year. It's not just us, it's every council that's affected. And doing this will give us another tool to take advantage of any opportunities which may arise, because it'll be an awful thing if something happened because of the council bureaucracy. We missed out on it. So it just helps us to do the things that we want to do to make life better for the people of Crawley.
I will now open up the debate to the floor. Councillor Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Conservative Group will be supporting recommendation to, as has already been described, it is useful for the council to have to be more nimble and to be able to realise opportunities as they present themselves in a timely manner and not be sort of outcompeted by the rest of the market who might not necessarily have as many hoops themselves to go through as the council might have. That said, of course, whilst having these extra freedoms, if you like, it is still important that the council exercises due diligence in any acquisitions that it makes, ensuring that we get the best value for what we buy. But certainly, if we're able to buy particular properties, this will help with our homelessness and temporary accommodation cost, so it would represent good value, but we should not lose sight of the fact that we do need that sensible due diligence when purchasing properties. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no further speakers. Councillor Jones, do you wish to use your right to reply? And in doing so, please formally move the recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to say that clearly I can reassure our councillors here that our officers will naturally exercise due diligence in this process and will only acquire things at the best possible value, and we'll be very careful with public money. So on that basis, I formally move.
Thank you very much. I call for a vote on recommendation 2. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. We will now deal with the 3 notices of motions before us this evening, starting with notice of motion 1, motion improving policing in Crawley as set out on page 85 of the agenda. This motion will be moved by Councillor Lamb and seconded by Councillor Yasmin Khan. I therefore call upon Councillor Lamb to formally move and present the motion.
Thank you very much. And I'm trying to see whether or not my head's going to fit on the screen. I've been accused of being big-headed in the past. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I think all of us who spend our time trying to engage with local residents, to talk to local residents, to listen to their priorities, will know just how big an issue community policing has become. From Lanny Green to Maidenbower, I've heard residents raise many different issues about policing, but wherever we go, it continues to be a major priority, from regular drug dealing that I've heard around the parade in Lanny Green through to bikes being stolen in Maidenbower, which I heard just a week ago about. People are not confident that their issues are being prioritised. They see the crimes. What they're not seeing, I'm afraid, is our local police. When they report the crimes, they all too often find that those same crimes are going ignored, often unreported, often unable to get a police officer to even meet with them to take the case down. The reality is that we're now at the point where when you go through the official police figures, in the last year, only 6% of crimes reported in Crawley, and bear in mind how many people are now not reporting crimes, are actually resulting in people being charged. In other words, right now, under this government, if you commit a crime in Crawley, you have a 19 in 20 case chance of getting away with it. The fact of the matter is that under the Conservatives, the UK has now become a lawless society. I warned the Police Crime Commissioner about this when they started talking about deprioritising antisocial behaviour. I warned them on the 15th of January 2015 that if you start by deprioritising ASB, it won't be long till people are getting into small crime. And when you start deprioritising small crimes, people will start getting into serious crimes. And I regret to tell you, Madam Mayor, that exactly the path which has been followed in the following 8 years. In addition to their funding from central government, funding for the police in Sussex has been the fastest growing part of people's council tax bills since the current Police and Crime Commissioner came into office. In fact, they now get more council tax than the council does. That is the state of their funding. We're told that the policing levels have been restored to where they were back in 2010. But the question residents have on their lips is, where are they? The fact of the matter is that I know many members of our local police and our PCSOs. I know that they are hard-working. I know that they're committed. I know that they want to do everything they possibly can for their community. The issue here lies in mismanagement of the resources and strategic mismanagement of the police. every week, in fact, even this week, if people have been paying attention to the papers, you'll have seen that we have announcements now that the policing system, so the prison system, has been so mismanaged under this government that judges are now receiving the instruction to delay sentencing, even in the cases of rape and burglary of people, for a year because the prisons are overfull. And we're having to release prisoners in increasing numbers early simply because there isn't the space any longer. Nationally, the Labour Party is offering people a community policing guarantee, including 13,000 new neighbourhood police officers and PCSOs back on the streets, a zero-tolerance approach to antisocial behaviour, action on shoplifting and violence, a crackdown reversing the government's decision to downgrade shoplifting offences below £200, giving people back a say in how their local police is, how their local area is policed once again, and making community policing the key to career progression through the police force, so that senior officers recognise its importance and understand that their role ultimately is one which is owed to the public and not simply to progression through senior management. And in addition, through the justice system, the Labour Party is looking to introduce specialist courts for rape to ensure we get rapists behind bars, not released, and a domestic abuser list to ensure that those with a history of domestic abuse are monitored in the same way as sex offenders. But why should Crawley have to wait for a Labour government to address these issues? This motion calls for the Police and Crime Commissioner to get to work now, to put aside their pet projects that they've had for the last 8 years, and once again begin focusing on delivering on the key priority, policing priority of residents, neighbourhood policing. It also calls upon us to work with the Cabinet member and with the police and the Safer Crawley partnership to ensure that once again we're giving local residents a say in how their town is policed. This council is elected by residents to be their voice in their behalf. I'm asking members today to be their voice on policing and to once again put neighbourhood policing at the heart of our local police force. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Yasmin Khan, please second the motion and confirm if you are wishing to reserve your right to speak later during the debate.
I reserve my right to speak later. Thank you.
I will now open up the debate to the floor. Councillor Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've seen some cynical motions come to council in my time, and I have to say this is right up there. While there are certainly some notes within this motion that we do support, overall the motion's too wordy, it has inaccuracies and somewhat slanted political points, and it needs calling out for what it is. It's a political stunt that's nothing about policing in Crawley and everything about Councillor Lamb using the council as a platform for his parliamentary election campaign. The motion's based on fear-mongering and misinformation, and it's designed to discredit our Police and Crime Commissioner, Katie Bourne, who in fact takes the concerns of local residents and businesses very seriously indeed. Now, I have spoken with Katie Bourne, and I'm grateful to her for providing me with some facts to help address this political motion that actually plays loose with some of the facts. Now, the motion claims that 6% of suspects are being charged for reported crime over the last 12 months, but it's worth remembering that the decision to charge suspects is one down to the Crown Prosecution Service and not actually the police. And in the year to the end of September, a total of 837 reported crimes in Crawley were solved, which equates to 7.2%. And it would, of course, be higher if we looked at the more serious crimes. They have a much higher rate of being solved. For nationally, for example, it's almost 80% when it comes to murders, the most serious crime that there is. The motion claims that residents and businesses routinely do not report crime because of a disbelief it won't be acted upon. Well, unfortunately, if the Labour group keep peddling that, they will help it to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Now, the reality is that the total amount of reporting of crime in Crawley went up 2% over the last year. That's an extra 270 crimes that were being recorded. And do remember as well that the police actively encourage the reporting of some crimes that have historically been underreported in the past, such as hate crimes. Now, Sussex Police have been advised they recognise the importance of community trust and confidence in reporting offences to the police, and they are taking several approaches to help increase this. One of those has been to improve how easily it is for businesses to report the crimes that affect them, and intelligence regarding those who are offending through the DISC system. The force has also publicised its online reporting process to enable the community and businesses to report crime online quickly. The motion also claims that the PCC is not taking the concerns of local residents and businesses seriously, which actually I find quite ironic because many people say that to me about you guys. But contrary to the claims made in the motion, there is in fact a significant level of both response and neighbourhood policing in the town. And at the end of this September, Sussex Police had a headcount of 3,234 officers, which compares to 2,959 in March 2012, which was before Katie Bourne was first elected as our PCC. That's roughly a 10% increase. Now, she's advised me that while it's not possible to separate this police officer uplift by policing district, a number of those additional officers have been posted to Crawley to enhance the local policing response. The deployment of these officers remains an operational policing decision for the Chief Constable to make based on organisational need and demand. But she's also pleased to confirm that there's a full complement of PCSOs in Crawley to provide community engagement and public reassurance by way of foot patrol. But also, Councillor Lamb said, where are they? Well, a large proportion of policing is unseen and goes on behind the scenes. This includes tackling underreported issues such as domestic violence and abuse, sex exploitation of children, and county lines. And the motion claims there isn't enough emphasis on neighbourhood policing. Well, it's simply wrong. I've been advised that Sussex Police are prioritising the neighbourhood policing approach to crime, prevention and enforcement, and the team in Crawley is led by an inspector, 4 sergeants and 3 teams of PCSOs and neighbourhood PCs, reporting to the district commander. The team works closely with the Safer Crawley Partnership on shared projects and responsibility. But there is one line in the motion that does stretch credibility, and Councillor Lamb repeated it, is that residents should not be forced to wait until the return of a Labour government to see their concerns acted upon. And I do have to wonder if a straight face was kept whilst that was being written down. Because, do you know what, I think there's one group of people that might welcome the return of a Labour government, and that's the criminal fraternity. Because let's see what might happen if we have a Labour government with policing. Well, I think there would be softer sentencing, less stop and search, they'd be softer on drugs, and maybe the police might even be pushed to be focused even more on woke issues rather than fighting crime. So, you know, I'm not sure that these are the priorities of Crawley residents. But when we look what the motion wants to achieve, there's 2 things. One is already happening, that neighbourhood policing is already being given a great emphasis. And the second resolution is wanting lots of public meetings. Now, whether that's the best use of police time, that's questionable. But what the motion completely ignores is the existing mechanism for scrutinising the PCC, which is the Police and Crime Panel. Okay, so on engagement, the police do their own surveys, and there's one going now, plus the Safer West Sussex Partnership are also surveying. But if you want to look at what's going on locally with the police, look at page 51 and 52 in the minute books from the OSC of one of the September meetings. It looks like this motion is just there to help support the role, to justify the role of the Cabinet member. I'm a strong supporter of the police, but I won't be supporting this motion. And in doing so, I state my support for the police and to support the work that they do. Thank you.
Councillor Sue Mullins.
Thank you. I have to say, Councillor Crowe, I never heard you speak quite so fast. You obviously had a lot to say and had to try and get it in very quickly. Maybe sometimes you should slow down and we could understand it all a lot better. I have to say that Crawley does its very best to support the police in every way. And as Councillor Lamb said, most of the stuff that comes into our postbag, into our emails, in our phone calls, more often than not, it's antisocial behaviour or it's low-level crime. And the story is always the same. Nobody seems to care. Nobody seems to be too worried about it. And so people lose confidence and they stop reporting. And that is a really poor way to have things. If you don't have people reporting crimes and they don't feel confident to go to the police to report what's happening to them, then things start to deteriorate pretty quickly, as we've already seen on some of our parades in Crawley. Crawley does its best. You have so many cameras around Crawley, it's amazing. We don't actually realise how closely Crawley is monitored. And we've even now got mobile ones. We've got them in Church Walk. We've just installed one somewhere else. I've forgotten where, but you know, we install these things and they're incredibly expensive and they are incredibly efficient. Last year, when I had part of my portfolio was public protection, I had the privilege of going down to Lewes to the control centre, the police control centre, to see what happens down there. If you get the chance to go and have a look. It is absolutely fascinating. There's an enormous building and it's absolutely full of screens with people watching the screens and watching what's going on the cameras all over the county. I went to the main part where the most important crimes are coming in. If something really important is coming in, it's put into a special part of the room so that the more senior officers can look at it and decide what to do. While I was standing there, I actually stood there and watched a robbery taking place in Langley Green. The camera in Langley Green swiveled around, pointed towards the chemist. You saw 3 young men go into the chemist, and about 20 minutes later, they came out with bulging knapsacks. Their faces weren't covered. They were as clear as day. As clear as I can see your face today, I could see that on the camera. They just chuckled to each other and walked off. They didn't even run. They walked off down the road. Apparently, they'd gone into the chemist and they had cleared the shelves in the chemist and gone. I turned around to the police officer who was watching this and were monitoring it, and I said, well, now we've seen that, what happens next? I was sort of expecting to see a police car come racing around the corner because they'd had plenty of time to know it was happening and to notify a police car in Crawley that something was happening on the Langley Green Parade and they should get there pretty quickly. The police officer smiled kindly to me and said, well, if we have a police car available, it will go. And I thought, is that it? Is that what happens? These people were clearly recognisable. I'm quite sure they'd done it before. They must be on some sort of database somewhere. Was there any follow-up to that? I don't know. And that's the sort of thing that makes you lose your confidence in what's going on. I do know that the police are very busy behind the scenes, Councillor Crowe. I know they concentrate on cybercrime, business crime, county lines, all these other things. But the people on our streets and in our shops need to have that confidence and to know that something will happen when something bad has happened in their area. And I'll tell you what the outcome of that was. You go into the chemist now in Langley Green, they've removed all the shelves in the centre of the shop, all the cosmetics, all the gifts, all the nice sort of stuff that chemists sell. It's all gone. You can go in there and get your prescription, you can walk out again because there's nothing else in there. And I can see before long that chemist will be closed down. And that's not the only shop on Langley Green that's suffering. And, everybody's telling us all the time, these things are going on, but the police, we don't seem to have the right communications or the right understanding of what it is we require. And you mentioned PCSOs. Yes, fantastic to get them back on our parades. But I've been told that when there's a shortage in the other parts of the police force, they are pulled off their duties, their local duties, and they have to go and do something else. So they're not there on the streets where they're needed all the time. I would like to know how much they actually are there.
Thank you. Councillor Lanza.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was disappointed to see such a party political notice of motion. I suppose a little while ahead of the Police and Crime Commissioner elections. And I was particularly disappointing to suggest that with such serious issues, people might want to wait for a... What happened there? Might want to wait for a Labour government. It doesn't seem reasonable to suggest to people that they should want to wait some infinite, undefined period of time for a solution. I think we can actually do better than that. And the notice of motion itself is inaccurate in terms of the reported crime comment, because the amount of crime that people take the trouble to report has actually gone up by 2%. In the past year. Now, it could go up further. And as Councillor Crowe has already said, we do have a renewed emphasis on neighbourhood policing, and that's a commitment. And the neighbourhood policing team in Crawley is making best use of its antisocial behaviour powers to prevent both crime and disorder taking place in the town, and we acknowledge that it is taking place. And the team have dispersal powers under the 2014 Anti-Social Crime and Policing Act, and they use those powers as well. So I don't think that your suggestion in the notice of motion that somehow neighbourhood policing is de-emphasised is at all accurate. And on those grounds as well, the notice of motion does not warrant carrying here. And in terms of the priority given to Crawley, we acknowledge the excellent work of the Safer Crawley Partnership, and that's received a grant from the Police and Crime Commissioner Community Safety Fund to improve community safety within the borough, and that grant is the highest of any local authority in West Sussex. So not only is neighbourhood policing being emphasised, not only is the reporting of crime going up due to public due diligence, but we also see the largest grant to the Safer Crawley Partnership of compared to its peers within West Sussex. So the Police and Crime Commissioner clearly takes the issue seriously and is doing all that she can through the police force to address it. And a cynical external observer might comment that instead of improving policing outcomes, this notice of motion, given its timing, is more about, in your terms, improving voting outcomes.
Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I fully support this motion. I'm going to give a little talk about how policing affects my ward. Very soon after becoming a councillor, I became involved with the business tenants within the Boardwalk, who've long had a problem with antisocial behaviour, including public drug use, shoplifting and threats of violence. Initially, the police organised meetings involving the business tenants of the Boardwalk, the Town Centre Business Improvement District and the 3 ward councillors, and Councillor Burgess and Councillor Nawaz have been involved with that. And these were very welcome. However, the issues raised by the businesses didn't feel their concerns were adequately addressed at these meetings, and they're suffering the same difficulties as they were a year ago, exactly the same problems now. The PCSOs working with the Business Improvement District wardens are engaging effectively with minor issues, but don't have the powers or the resources to address the more serious crimes that are happening in the area. The nighttime businesses rarely get a response. We've had reports of windows with bricks being thrown through windows and not getting a police response until 2 days later, when they were asked to provide a statement, and by then any opportunity is gone. Staff assaults have happened, and there's regular open drug dealing off the roof of a car outside one of the business premises. After just 2 of these meetings, the police emailed a couple of us, not the entire participants of the meetings. No, that would be the obvious thing to do. They emailed myself and the manager of the Business Improvement District. They did not contact either of the other 2 councillors, and they certainly did not contact any of the businesses to say, OK, we've had enough now, we don't want these meetings to continue, where they are an essential source of intelligence for the police and the problems that the businesses are having. These problems and the sense of inadequate police response has caused 2 of the owners to sell their businesses, and all of the businesses have suffered losses due to loss of trade and theft from their premises. And in another small area of my ward, Pembroke Park, the PCSO has been brilliant in reducing antisocial behaviour. When we started on the project, there were gangs, basically low-level antisocial behaviour, and the presence of our PCSO has been amazing in stopping that. Unfortunately, there is a particularly stubborn problem where a car parks on the edge of Pembroke Park, normally about midnight to 1 o'clock, and plays music at full blare most nights of the week, and drug dealing happening from the car window, witnessed by multiple people, and I've seen multiple videos of this. I've reported this through, and we get nothing, because the PCSOs don't work past 11 o'clock, and the only police response available outside of those times is a police response system, which isn't there to deal with regular routine antisocial behaviour and matters such as this. They've got much more important things to do. We are not being covered effectively by our Police and Crime Commissioner, and that needs to be addressed now. So I support the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Miller-Smith.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb, I'm about to lose the context, sorry. Councillor Lamb was talking about Katie Bourne's pet projects. I just wanted to say some of these pet projects or things recently that she's been involved in are issues such as stalking and harassment, which is not an insignificant crime that is reported if you look at the statistics locally. Also, in Crawley, investment in youth schemes such as Crawley Kicks, Wickets, Beabush Boxing Club, Step Up, Crawley Community Youth Service, West Sussex Missouri Angling Academy, Crawley Film Initiative, Maidenbower Youth Community Leaders, support for victims through programs such as Presence Women's Resource and Crawley Frontline Support, support for the elderly, including through Contact the Elderly Project, other projects such as ongoing support for Crawley and Gatwick Business Watch, Tamil Learning Center, and improvements made to Church Walk Crawley, including all of the other sort of programs which she has managed to get significant funding for in the county, often which Crawley is the biggest recipient when that money is sent out. So I think rather than being sort of really quite snarky about pet projects, these are projects that are benefiting our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Burgess.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with my colleague, the councillor, both Councillor Crowe and Councillor Lanzo, with what they've said, and also agree with my colleague across the road. We do have a very strong relationship with our PCSO in Three Bridges, and it's good to know that we're building a very strong response to the problems in the area, and this is one problem, but all three of us are working on. However, I'd like to look at the bigger picture at the moment, because it's not so much the crime as much as what causes the crime as such. Now, the Police and Crime Commissioner has secured a further £1.5 million from the Home Office in 22-23, continue to maintain support the Violence Reduction Partnership, VRP, in Sussex, supporting the Violent Reduction Unit. Now, I suppose, I'm presuming that you all know about this, as you know on that side. Now, the Operations Safety identified two hotspots in Crawley, the High Street and the town centre. Now, highlights from these areas in 2023 showed that the peak risk of demand was Friday and Saturday night between 10 o'clock at night and 4 o'clock in the morning, and 14% of violent crimes recorded were associated with licensed bars. We probably realise this, but extra patrols have been put in place at hotspots. And thanks to PCC getting funding to establish the VRP funded schools intervention project across all secondary schools in Crawley and has made a positive impact on the emotional and mental health and behaviour and attendance. These can underpin positive outcomes. Knife intervention project, also funded by the VRP, is operating in Crawley at various places. And as Crawley Borough Council are involved in identifying such areas, I'm sure you know where the sessions are taking place. I'm assuming you do, and as the Labour group work with them. Now, funding of the 5K from the serious violence duty, not Labour funded by the way, was also used to deliver knife crime prevention support. And the Police and Crime Commissioner approached Crawley Borough Council about using a shared prosperity fund to deliver enhanced outcomes to the areas of deprivation with the area who need support. This includes a specific proposal to use UK Shared Prosperity Fund to jointly fund an offer within Sussex Police Business Crime Team specifically tasked with supporting businesses and retailers in Crawley. Apparently this proposal was declined by the Labour Council, who wanted to invest the money into other initiatives. Hope they didn't overspend it. To conclude, our Police and Crime Commissioner, recognised as one of the best in the country above Labour Police and Crime Commissioners, is absolutely committed to strengthening policing and tackling all forms of crime, including those committed against women, girls, whether transgendered or not only in Crawley, but across Sussex. I am sure we all agree that in order not to undermine public confidence in policing or create unnecessary fear, it is important to refer to facts rather than unsubstantiated assertions. So, wait for Labour government? Have a Labour PCC? You're having a laugh. Stop pulling my leg.
Thank you. Councillor Yasmin Khan, do you wish to speak? Thank you.
Hi. Okay, I've heard a lot here today. We're not trying to scare anyone. first of all. I don't know if you've been on social media. Have you seen what people are putting on social media, that they're reporting crimes and they're not getting anywhere? So I am inundated with complaints all the time that the police are not doing anything. I had to intervene on so many occasions to contact the district commander to get some results, but ordinary people, they're not getting results and they are complaining, and it's not us that are causing the fear, no way. And I don't think it's anything to do with Labour, or we're not talking about. We want to benefit our people, we want to keep Crawley safe, and I think that is what my aim is as a public protection officer. That's what I want to do. I want to keep people safe and I want to help them as much as we can. But it's not us causing any fear, it is people complaining, and I think you need to go on social media and you need to look at the complaints and what people are putting on there.
Thank you. There are no further speakers. Councillor Lamb, do you wish to use your right to reply, and in doing so please formally move the notice of motion?
Yes, please. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I formally move the notice of motion. I have to say it comes as a surprise as the tone taken by the members opposite. It is a very brave position to take to try and ignore the evidence of their own eyes and the issue that is repeatedly raised by residents across different forms of media and certainly on the doorstep. Literally, this meeting began with a resident raising issues of antisocial behaviour just behind this town hall. To try and claim that these things don't exist, it feels to be a very brave position to try and take, and you can bet that any resident who watches this meeting afterwards, or frankly asks me any questions about the Conservative Party's position locally on the issues that they raise on the doorstep, will be somewhat surprised by the tone taken by the members opposite. We've all had to deal with motions in the time which have had tone that we've not necessarily appreciated, but sometimes you just grin and bear some of the unsubstantiated stuff that you may feel is in there, or political stuff you may feel is in there, if you feel that the resolves points are relevant. And let's look at what the resolves points of the motion actually are. To call upon the Sussex Police and Crime Commissioner to refocus the strategic priorities of Sussex Police to place a greater emphasis on neighbourhood policing. That's kind of hard to argue against, and indeed the members opposite haven't really tried to. And to support the work of the Safe Crawley Partnership and Cabinet Member for Public Protection in creating an ongoing programme of regular public meetings across Crawley to allow a greater number of residents, elected members and the police to have dialogue on ongoing issues of crime and antisocial behaviour in the borough and how that's prioritised. Well, that feels pretty common sense as well, doesn't it? And they're about to vote against it. Now, that's what residents watching this, and I'd remind you, these are now videotaped, so there's a permanent record of this, are going to see you voting against in just a minute, or failing to vote for. And that's how they're going to evaluate you. If this is a matter of politics, I would say you've played it very poorly indeed. The fact of the matter is that this motion actually came out of a Labour group meeting where members were expressing extreme frustration at the number of issues we're getting raised about the police that were not being addressed when we're trying to address them at the neighbourhood level. And what can we do about it? And making a clear statement that residents should benefit from neighbourhood policing felt like collectively a good position to address, and I volunteered to take it on. You might try and claim the figures wrong. The figures actually come from the police's open data portal, so if the police have got their figures wrong, then I guess the figures would be wrong. The difference may well be because, as you well know, this motion had to be submitted a number of weeks back, and if a different month's figures come in, they can adjust things. But the figures and the details in the motion are entirely accurate. I do find it somewhat odd that the members opposite try to hide behind the Crown Prosecution Service, which of course is a part of the government at the end of the day. Who runs them? From the Prime Minister down to the Police and Crime Commissioner and the members opposite, they all have a role in determining how our criminal justice system actually operates and our policing system operates. They can't hide behind another tier of that same government and say it's nothing to do with us, mate. The situation has arisen on their watch. 13 years to get this right, and we find it in its worst state pretty much ever, members of the council. The simple fact of the matter is that the members opposite have decided to say that the priorities raised by residents are not their priorities, their crime is not their priority, and that they're not going to listen. Weak on crime, weak on residents' priorities, just plain weak. We will be voting for a motion that endorses an approach that puts residents' priorities on policing right at the heart of our agenda for policing. The members opposite can do what they want and suffer the consequences next May.
Thank you. I call for a vote on substantive notice of motion 1. Notice of motion 1, motion improving policing in Crawley. Is that agreed, or would you like a vote on it? We'll go to a vote then. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please? And against? And any abstentions? So there's 24 and 14 against. And 0 abstentions. So the motion is carried. Thank you. Next on the agenda is notice of motion 2, recycling rates as set out on page 87 of the agenda. This motion will be moved by Councillor Crowe and seconded by Councillor Hellier. Councillor Crowe, please formally move and present the motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I formally move the motion and I will speak to it. This is an area where the council has been underperforming for many years, and now I know that there's a habit of always blaming everybody else but themselves, but we've now had this administration for 9.5 years, and this council is failing to make any significant progress on our recycling rate. Now, I know recycling is not the whole part of the equation. There is reduce and reuse as well, but I would like to think that we all want to that we all care for our environment and that we all want to see our recycling rates as high as we can. And you can see quite clearly the recycling rates for the 7 district and borough councils across West Sussex, and we've made barely any progress over the last 3 years from the latest available figures. Indeed, over the last year, we have figures for up to 2022. We're one of 2 who've actually gone backwards over the year. It is very disappointing indeed. And I do have to question whether at a political level, certainly, because I do believe that the officers do their best, but at a political level, how seriously this subject is taken. And while I might get some criticism for the age of the correspondence that is an appendix to the motion, quite clearly that correspondence from the then leader of the council says to me that he's not taken the government's concerns seriously in seeking to offer their help as to what they can do to help Crawley to improve our recycling rates. The response suggests that actually, we don't take it seriously. We don't care that much. I'd rather get a barb in at you, quite honestly. That's how it comes across. So the motion is asking for the council to state that yes, we do take it seriously and that we would like to do something about it, and we'll show a bit of leadership on it, and let's see what we can do to improve things. That is why I proposed a member working group chaired by the cabinet member to meet and to seek expert advice and to see what we can do to improve the recycling rates. There is clearly an issue here in Crawley, and now I see there's an amendment and I will talk to it. So first of all, it says that the council should restate its strong commitment. Well, given the correspondence that I unearthed and have published, I'm not sure that there is a strong commitment to improve Crawley's household waste recycling rate, or has it failed so far? Which one is it? And then we have a line around taking account of the differing challenges that the borough has in comparison to other authorities. Well, yes, there are some challenges here, but Worthing has a lot of flats as well, like Crawley, and yet Worthing's figure is significantly better than Crawley's. And then this one particularly annoys me, where the full council would be sort of basically instructing the OSC to have a scrutiny panel to look at recycling. Well, no, let's have some leadership. Let's have some leadership from the cabinet member. Let him decide it. We don't need this full council to tell OSC to set up a scrutiny panel. OSC is quite capable of doing that themselves, and no doubt they will probably do that now, given that a cabinet member working group is being ruled out of the question by the administration. And then we have this final paragraph in the amendment, and come on, we know how cynical this is about the recycling credits. The party opposite know full well that the county council are not going to change their position on this. And of course the recycling credits were something that was only ever meant to be temporary, but had become basically mainstreamed by the district and borough councils, and to try to insist that that is a part responsible for Crawley's woeful recycling rate is it's a deliberate and cynical addition to the amendment, which we will not be supporting. I would ask that all members support the motion as is. Let's all work together and see what we can do to improve Crawley's recycling rate. Let's lead from the front and not just push it back down to OSC. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hellier, please second the motion and confirm if you are wishing to reserve your right to speak later during the debate.
Yes, I second the motion and reserve my right to speak later.
Thank you. We have an amendment to the notice of motion. This is detailed on page 15 of the supplementary agenda. Councillor Jones, please introduce your amendment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We seek to amend the Conservative motion for several reasons. But once again, certainly not for the first time, we have a motion from them where one wonders where the motivation for it's coming from. It's almost like they're taking their instructions from their colleagues from West Sussex County Council as to what would be most convenient for the County Council. And I almost have to say to them, through you, Madam Mayor, why don't you come out and be honest about it? There's a lot of talk here about upping the recycling rates, but if the Tory group's saying they want to go to fortnightly bin collections for rubbish, why not say so? Even better than that, go into the election and tell your residents that's what you've decided. I don't personally share the view that fortnightly bin collections are the right thing to do, but if they think saving county halls some money is better than putting their own residents' views first, then I think the Conservative group needs to be transparent about that, Madam Mayor. But in the meantime, I won't take any lectures from the Conservatives on recycling, either locally or nationally. It is difficult to do anything at a major level about it at the moment, particularly because of the delay by the Tory government in bringing forward the National Waste Strategy, as we are reluctant to do anything before it's entirely clear what we will be mandated to do going forward. And that means investing in the infrastructure and fleet and equipment needed, and that can't proceed until we know. And now we know as well that the government isn't going to make a decision this side of a general election, and the minister's admitted that, and I wonder why. We've been waiting for clarity on this since Michael Gove first announced this was going to happen back in 2018. Another sign that this government doesn't know what it's doing, not that any was needed. In any event, it also means that any national funding to make such improvements are not forthcoming, and that is their fault, not Crawley Borough Council's. But the Conservative record on hindering moves to improve recycling are by no means just a national thing. Councillor Crowe was getting his defence in first, but locally the recycling credits payment scheme that helped bring forward recycling improvements that the Conservatives at the County Council abolished back in 2020, despite all the objections that the damage it would do to recycling rates, has clearly come home to roost, as some of us at the time suggested they would. And that is why we believe if anyone at this council is genuinely serious about improving things, that they will support our amendment that seeks to get the county council to give us a fair share of the money needed to do what they tell us they would like to happen. And anyone who doesn't support that tonight is otherwise engaging in empty rhetoric. And these credits were never meant to be temporary. Councillor Crowe knows that it's simply untrue to say that. It could also be argued quite easily that there is less recycling or general waste being dumped in the right places because of the amenity tip entry restrictions and days of closure. And there are several Conservative county councillors sitting opposite, including the proposer of the motion, I should add, who've been quite happy to support all of that throughout this time, as well as the cuts to the recycling credits. Now, taking these away and doing these things were all pretty outrageous at the time, but to come here complaining that things have not improved or even gone backwards on the back of these things is pretty breathtaking, quite frankly. It really is. But there's also something slightly misleading about this motion, Madam Mayor, when it comes to what the waste hierarchy says is most important. Many here will remember the phrase reduce, reuse, recycle in the desired order of sustainability. And one of the reasons we have less than other districts to recycle is that we generate less waste per capita with our residents in the borough compared to most others. In fact, I believe I'm correct in saying that we're already one of the lowest areas in the country for the generation of waste to begin with. And that means we've got something fundamentally right and have done for some considerable time. And to focus on how much is recycled is almost to disregard how much is thrown away in the first place and how many of these areas currently lauded by the opposition, I suspect, do not have such a good record as Crawley's, to say the least. The other thing to say is that just using the recycling rates is a somewhat phony comparison. And the sad thing is that many on the Conservative group here know that, but have still persisted with this motion. The other West Sussex boroughs and districts' better figures,
30 seconds,
particularly in the rural and more prosperous areas, are buoyed up by the amount of green garden waste they generate. Big gardens, you see. The dry rubbish recycling rates that we have here in Crawley are comparable against the other districts and boroughs in West Sussex and not particularly different. Given these considerations, Madam Mayor, I don't accept, and that there's stuff about proper comparators in terms of the urban areas, in terms of Crawley's situation, denser population urban area, the high number of flats and HMOs. Can I just cover very quickly the suggestion of screen time? Otherwise, I can't address the point about why it's a screen time.
You've had your 5 minutes, Councillor. Councillor Noyce, I believe you're seconding the amendment, and in doing so, please confirm if you are wishing to reserve your right to speak later during the debate.
Yes, I do. Yes. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Right, and can I speak?
Yes, yes, certainly.
Yeah, some of my points have been made already, but just so that I don't miss any. Crawley Borough Council, along with the majority of waste collection authorities across the country, has been waiting for the delayed government waste and resources strategy and confirmation as to which waste and recycling collection arrangements will be mandated. The potential requirement for separate food waste collection alongside consideration of mandatory garden waste and separate stream dry recycling will have significant implications for waste collection authorities. Delays in the release of the government strategy has, however, significantly impacted upon waste collection authorities' ability to plan over the medium to long term. Although the recycling rates for Crawley are lower than other West Sussex districts and boroughs, a number of mitigating factors need to be considered. Crawley has a significantly higher proportion of flats with no gardens or indeed houses with similar relatively smaller gardens. The headline recycling figures include tonnages for garden waste, which will be lower in Crawley. If we look at the tonnages for dry recycling, excluding garden waste, Crawley's recycling rate of 23.02%, 22, is more comparable to the county average of 25.84%. The proportion of recycling from flats or blocks sharing communal recycling facilities is commonly lower than at individual properties. The relatively high proportion of flats in Crawley will also impact upon the local recycling rate. The particular demographics of Crawley, which typically display lower recycling rates. Notwithstanding these underlying factors, the recognised industry hierarchy is reduce, reuse, recycle. So reducing the amount of residual waste should be the initial focus, and reuse or recycle are then considered in sequence. When looking at this measure, we can see that Crawley compares favourably with 312.57 kilograms of waste per head, compared with 366.84 kilograms as an average for the county. Despite this good performance for residual waste reduction in the run-up to looking at options for the new waste contract after February 2026, the Council will be considering ways in which the service can further reduce waste and increase its recycling rate. We would hope this is within the context of clearer guidance from central government. However, the Council is committed to reviewing performance and considering options as part of this wider options appraisal. Thank you.
I will now open up the debate floor. Councillor Lamb.
Thank you very much. Councillor Crowe made mention to the fact that the Labour administration at Crawley has been in place for 9.5 years. And I have to say that with the performance tonight it's not desperately hard to see why that might have been the case. Firstly, we have a motion where they're arguing against residents' priorities. And the second, they've decided to cram in a 6-year-old email from me into a motion, no doubt at the group meeting, hurriedly thinking to themselves, we found something incredibly secret that we can wave against Peter and deal with him as a parliamentary candidate. Ignoring, of course, the fact that I've actually discussed this letter previously at full council meetings. It's in the public domain anyway. And of course, that by virtue of bringing it into this motion, he actually enables me the opportunity to talk about all of the letters I've written to central government about issues that matter to residents and which we, as of yet, have not had an accurate response from central government. So thank you to the tactical brilliance from the Leader of the Opposition. Let's talk about these letters. Let's talk about the letters to the Secretary of State for Transport on the fact that season ticket prices have gone up enormously under this government, affecting many Crawley commuters. Let's talk about the letter to the local government secretary on trying to halt evictions of private tenants during the pandemic, something which is continuing to have knock-on effects now to our temporary housing payments. Let's talk about the letter to the Secretary of State for Transport on ticket office closures, an issue which has shown enormous concern amongst local residents and opposition. Let's talk about the letter to the Chancellor of the Exchequer on homelessness and the actions which need to be taken to address homelessness within our town. Let's talk about the letter to the Secretary of State for Local Government on West of Ifield with questions that have still not been answered on the government's involvement and intervention in West of Ifield. Let's talk about letters to multiple Prime Ministers and multiple Chancellors on local government funding to deal with the very issue we were discussing earlier tonight in terms of the risks posed to this Council's financial future. Let's talk a letter about Boris Johnson as Prime Minister, about racist, Islamophobic and homophobic remarks being made by a member who was elected by many of the members opposite. Let's talk about the letter to the Chancellor on the need to tackle the cost of renting in Crawley. Let's talk about the letter to the Transport Secretary on the issue of cross-border hire and running down the taxi services in the country. Let's talk about the letter to the Secretary of State for Business, Economic Development and Infrastructure in terms of the closure of Crawley's post office, an issue that is continuing to have an effect on residents. Let's talk about the letter to the Health Secretary on the lack of funding for health services in Crawley, which saw our town in special measures for the better part of a decade. Let's talk about the letter to the Secretary of State of Education on deadly concrete in Crawley schools, and an issue which is still not being addressed adequately by this government or by the county councillors within our patch. Endless letters to central government on endless matters that genuinely matter to the people of this town, which we have yet to get a satisfactory response to the government from. So they can say it's a snarky letter to central government, but I'm not going to apologise for a letter back to a minister in a department that still has yet to produce a national waste strategy. I don't actually think we've actually had one under the Conservatives at all after 13 years in government. That's how little issue that they have in the topic of recycling, how little interest they have in trying to promote it. Well, the issues that residents are raising with me time and time again are going unanswered by this government. I am deeply indebted to the Leader of the Opposition for his tactical brilliance tonight, and I'm beg to I think I've got a better haircut. Thank you. Good.
Thank you. Councillor Piggott.
Sure, thank you very much. Right, let's get back to the point, shall we? So the motion is about recycling. I think all of us have an interest in improving recycling. I don't think anyone around the hall tonight would disagree with that. I think if we focus back on residents rather than letters and talking about something completely off-piste, we need to think about this. We need to think about what the motion is asking for. It's asking for consideration moving forward. It's important. One of the key reasons I became a councillor is because of the environment, and probably a lot of you know that, and probably to a greater extent or a lesser extent. I think what I hear, and I know Councillor Jones mentioned this as to, where did we get this from? Was this about, bi-weekly collection of waste? It's not, it's residents. I have residents asking me when I talk to them on the door about recycling, especially in flats. They're concerned about flats which have stinking piles of rubbish in the recycling bins. It's an issue that the residents are asking us to deal with, not have petty arguments across the hall. It's really important that we focus on this, amendments or not, that we actually do look and take into consideration what recycling is in this town. It is very low. It is going backwards. Reduce, reuse, recycle. Maybe we do have a lower rate, that is important, but as the opposition have said kindly, that's because we don't have the green waste that other areas have. That's why our levels are lower. It's important to think back at what the motion is about. The motion is about recycling. We all want to see it improved. It has to be done in the right way, as the motion sets out quite clearly. And we really need to make sure we back this. I don't think we should be arguing about it. We need, especially as we've been reminded, this is a recorded presentation, we need to be mindful of the fact that residents want to know what are we going to do about it, not arguing about it. Arguing is petty. It's not getting us anywhere. Residents want to see us move forward and actually do something about it. So for me, this motion is great. I think it's really positive. I don't think the amendments are helpful. I think it tries to water down what the motion is asking for. And I think all of us should support the motion because it's asking us to do what the residents are asking us. Thank you.
Councillor Nawaz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think we heard a lot about recycling already. I think both sides have speaking about it. But I think one of the words used by leader, Councillor Jones, reduce, reuse, recycle. And I think that's quite important. And one thing I do say, Councillor Pickett just accepted, we are actually quite better in that, so thank you for that. One thing I would like to say, I think when we talk about, let's argue, let's talk about it, that's what we're suggesting. Let's bring it to scrutiny panel. Let's make a scrutiny panel, discuss about it, and that we are open to suggestion, having a scrutiny panel to look into what further can be done. We are therefore recommending that the chair of the Overview Scrutiny Commission looks into this. It's clear that proper way of backbench non-executive councillor can feed into the policy process of this council through the scrutiny, and it's the backbench councillors bringing proposal. This is how it should be, because we were talking about is discussing it. What are the other options? Just not come and bring a motion and do it. What suits us? We talk about residents. What suits this council? What suits us? What suits its residents? That's why it should be properly scrutinised and decided. And I think it's really good if you go through the scrutiny panel and chair of the scrutiny panel set up a commission and make a suggestion brought forward to the full council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lanza.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was trying to work out if Councillor Lamb spoke faster than Councillor Crowe, but I couldn't quite come to a conclusion on that. So I think I'll watch the video of this meeting and assess that. Councillor Jones appeared to decry the household waste recycling site booking system. I'll remind him that in the Crawley case, that was partly on the advice of the police who earlier we were supporting. And also remind him that in May 2021, we had quite an overwhelming Conservative result for the county council elections, where we were open about continuing with the booking system for household waste recycling sites. And that booking system has, without a doubt, reduced queuing, and many of the people who were sceptical about it to begin with are now openly supportive of the booking system. The headline recycling figures do bear restating in a different form. Flats, yeah, we've got flats, but so do other districts and boroughs, and in increasing numbers. But the headline figures, if we achieve the average recycling rate of the other 6 West Sussex districts and boroughs, our recycling rate would move from 31% to 45%. And in addition to that, let's consider what we would achieve in tonnage if we did that. So I will split the figures here. We would have an additional 2,400 tonnes of dry recycling. We would have an additional 4,500 tonnes of composting if we achieved the West Sussex district and borough average. So surely that is something worth aiming for, which is the point of the notice of motion. And Councillor Jones asked about the motivation of the notice of motion. Well, it's a simple one, really. It's to increase our recycling rate. It's not a complex point, really. I do take some issue with full council trying to, via its executive, really, to ask scrutiny to do something. I mean, scrutiny is supposed to be independent. And I have to say, the proposal to engage scrutiny feels slower than having the cabinet member demonstrate leadership with a member working group. And this is an urgent issue. And Councillor Jones again mentioned the termination of the recycling credits. Those recycling credits were designed to both to support and encourage local authorities such as ours to increase their recycling rates. That encouragement obviously didn't work for Crawley, did it? Because we were underperforming even when those credits were in place. And if you really wanted to re-secure recycling credits, the tone of your remarks would be different tonight, because your remarks do not encourage those recycling credits to be reinstated. And I have to say, Councillor Jones, and not for the first time, the general underlying narrative of his remarks, as on so many occasions, is it's not our fault, Gov. It really isn't. And that's the underlying narrative. And I really, perhaps it's a remark for question time later, but I'll try it anyway. I think in the context of this debate and other debates, I'd ask Councillor Jones, has he ever got anything wrong? Has he ever made a mistake? When can he last recall in public conceding error?
Thank you. Councillor Sue Mullins.
Thank you. I just think on that point, I think he would admit to it when you do, Councillor Lance, like what you do at West Sussex. I have to say this is such an old chestnut from West Sussex. I spent 6 years down at West Sussex, and that was 5 years ago now. And every time we talked about recycling, up would hop one of the Tory councillors and go, well, Crawley, you are really bad at doing this. And we used to hear it over and over again, and nobody ever spoke about the mitigating factors and why Crawley is just slightly different to other areas in West Sussex. I'm not going to go through all the green waste and the residual waste again. It's all been made very clear by the councillors on this side. First of all, I'd like to deal with the tip. The tip is fabulous. It's a great thing to have in Crawley. It's absolutely marvellous. It's incredibly efficient. Yes, we now have a booking system, and the booking system works really well. These days you don't have to queue up. You can book ahead. You can actually book on the first thing in the morning. As long as you're quick, first thing in the morning you can get a slot on the same day. Unfortunately, although that works great for most people, there are still people who don't really care too much. And if they turn up on a Thursday when the tip is closed, or they forget that they're supposed to make an appointment and they turn up and they're turned away, then what do they do with the rubbish? Well, if you live in Langley Green like I do, I know perfectly well where it goes. A lot of it goes down Langley Walk, or the top of Langley Walk, or outside Langley Green Farm, and then somebody rings me and I have to ring the council and say, excuse me, it's happened again. There's a great load of rubbish sitting right in the middle of the path, and it's not very nice rubbish, more often than not, and that's just where the children are walking through to go to Cherry Lane Playground. Please, can you come and move it? And our council does. They're very efficient. They turn up quickly and they shift it. But that costs the council all the time. So West Sussex is doing well because Thursday they're closed. West Sussex are doing well because they've got a fabulous booking system and everybody's so happy. Crawley Borough Council's not so happy because they're having to clean up the mess that unscrupulous people dump. And unfortunately, there are people like that in this world. Yes, we do need to have a scrutiny panel. I'm working on this because, yes, we would like to see our figures go up. Everybody on this side is only too keen to renew and recycle and do it the way we should. But we have particular problems here. Now, we talked about flats. If we had a scrutiny panel, perhaps the people on that could get together and talk about how we could improve what happens in blocks of flats. You have a block of flats, they've got all the bins outside, but it only takes one person in that block of flats to put things in the wrong bin or the wrong sort of things in the bin, and it ruins all of the rubbish from the big block of flats. That is something that we need to address, but it's not going to be an easy one. So it needs everybody's heads together to decide how we could address that. You talk about us not moving forward. We cannot move forward. We've had lots of debates, and you've been there, Councillor Crowe, at the Cabinet, when we've talked about bringing in new vehicles, the vehicles that we can use for recycling, and change them. But we cannot afford to lay out hundreds of thousands of pounds on new vehicles when then waiting a year later for a waste strategy to come forward, or 2 years later, or whenever they decide to do it, that tells us how we should be doing it. Because then the vehicles we may have bought and paid out huge amounts of money for, because they're not cheap, become obsolete. We need guidance from the government as to what the strategy will be so that we know how to provide here in Crawley. I've talked about the fly tipping, I've talked about the vehicles. One thing that you talked about earlier, one of your councillors there, when they were talking about the police situation, talked about how we need to educate our young people, that we need to start early, we need to get them into groups, we need to occupy them, get them interested, talk to them, make them understand so that as they get older, they become good citizens. Well, we run the Young Citizen event in Crawley. We are unique. It doesn't happen anywhere else in West Sussex. And if any of you went along to that, one of the activities that the children, all the children from Year 6 in Crawley took part in was the reduce, recycle part of it. And the kids were loving it. They were having a great time. And they were learning. They were learning lessons for the future. And that's where you begin. You begin with your young people. And that's what we're doing on this side of the building. And I wish you were doing it in other parts of the West Sussex.
Thank you. Councillor Miller-Smith.
Thank you. I think Councillor Mullins mentioned about one of the reasons for having the Overview and Scrutiny Commission set up a panel for discussion with members. I think the motion as it stands is looking at just taking a top-down approach on that, with the cabinet member for environmental services and climate change setting up and chairing a cross-party member working group. So I'm not entirely sure how we can't sort of achieve some of those same discussions via that. Another thing I just wanted to say about all of this discussion is, you say, oh, fly tipping or waste or how much people are recycling. It is about people at the end of the day, obviously. And so anything that we do, we don't have to wait for strategies from government. There are plenty of things that we can continue to work on and continue to see how we can improve people's behavior with reusing, recycling, renewing. And certainly around things like fly tipping, those issues as well, they need to be tackled. And we need to make sure that we're on it punitively. I don't know what the figures are that we have had recently as far as any fines or things that have been put out, but it'd be interesting to know. So I would say we don't need to wait for any sort of government strategy. There's plenty within our own domain that we can and should be doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lunnan. No? Okay, thank you. Councillor Hellier, do you... Sorry. Thank you. There are no further speakers. Councillor Crowe, do you wish to use your right to reply? And in doing so, please formally move the notice of motion.
Thank you. I think I already formally moved it, but I'll move it again. Well, firstly, can I thank everyone for their responses, but there's a common theme that came out from members opposite, and that is that they don't like it up 'em, and they don't like criticism, and they're overly sensitive to criticism. And yes, this motion does criticise the performance of this council over several years, in that we are not recycling as much as what we would like to see, and we're not just lower than the rest of West Sussex, we are significantly lower than the rest of West Sussex, and we want to do something about it. Councillor Jones, Well, I'm sorry, but you wholly misrepresented several points about the Conservative group. We do not have a position on advocating fortnightly waste collections, but don't let that stop you from telling people that we do, because Councillor Lamb's is going to tell people on the previous motion whatever he thinks about what we believe about the police. I haven't actually the only county councillors that I discussed this with are the ones in this group. The Cabinet of the County Council don't know that I brought this to this council unless they've looked at the committee papers. I haven't told them. So I'm, you know, you seem to think I'm sort of a puppet from West Sussex. I'm not. We are very much independent here, and we do what is right for Crawley. And I certainly have not sought advice or indeed permission, as you might think, from colleagues at the County Council, other than those ones who happen to be members of this group. I do agree with you actually about the waste strategy and the government delaying it. That is the one area where we do have common ground. I think it would be helpful had it been brought forward sooner, but it is what it is. But you and several members mentioned reduce and reuse, but maybe didn't hear that I was the one that said it first. I said it in my speech. I recognise it's an important part of what we do, but that doesn't mean that we should just ignore the recycling rate, which is what came across from other members. Councillor Noyce, well, I'm sorry, you just seem to trot out a whole load of excuses. You know, I'm actually being quite flattering because I want you to lead this council to respond. I want you to lead a working group of members, and when you and your colleagues are just shrugging your shoulders, oh, let scrutiny deal with it. But you know, I want to see the council sort of prioritising this. Councillor Lamb, well, it was nice to see the Mr Angry routine again, because I've not seen it for a couple of meetings, and it did feel like you were somewhat rattled, I've got to say, and you trotted off a whole load of letters that you'd submitted to government, but totally not connected with this motion whatsoever. But it did feel like, you know, the email that is referenced here, you know, I've known about this for years. It's not that I've just sort of noticed it, by the way, but it seemed very appropriate because it highlights how the political leadership of this council has not been taking recycling seriously enough over the last few years. And that is demonstrated by the figures that we have. Can I thank Councillor Piggott for staying on topic, which was really refreshing to hear. He was the first for several members to do that. And Councillor Lanza, I think I've heard the best speech of the evening tonight when you spoke on this. So, and thank you for your support on this. But Councillor Sue Mullins, well, I welcome that she's been converted to the booking system at the Household Waste Recycling Centre, but there is no evidence that it has linked to increased in fly tipping, or indeed that fly tipping is linked because the tip happens to be closed on a Thursday. There is no direct evidence for that. And she mentioned the junior citizenship and the rest of West Sussex. Well, I don't know if you noticed, but sadly, we only control one other district or borough council in West Sussex now, which is Ada. You know, we're not in charge of the other districts and boroughs in West Sussex anymore. So it's not down to us. So, you know, I don't know what goes on in those district boroughs about junior citizenship. All I know is that for very many years, they have a much better recycling rate than what we do here in Crawley. And I want to see it improve. So we will be opposing the amendment because the motion as originally tabled is enough. It is right to sort of for this council to move forward and not offer more excuses. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I call for a vote on the proposed amendment to Notice of Motion 2, recycling rates as set out on page 15 of the order paper. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please?
Can we do the amendment first?
That was the amendment.
So this is a vote on the proposed.
This is the vote on the proposed amendment. Okay. Show of hands in favour.
Okay.
Thank you. Those against? Thank you. Any abstentions? Thank you. For the amendment 20, against 14, the amendment is carried. I now call for a vote on substantive Notice of Motion 2, recycling rates as amended. Is that agreed, or would you like a vote on it? Thank you.
A vote.
You want a vote? Okay, that's fine. That's fine. So can I have a show of hands in favour? Those against? And any abstentions? Thank you. So that's 20 votes for, 0 against, and 14 abstentions. The motion is carried. Okay, thank you. As amended. Right, thank you. Right, next on the agenda is notice of motion 3, support for care leavers as set out on page 91 of the agenda. This motion will be moved by Councillor Miller-Smith and seconded by Councillor Mughali. Councillor Miller-Smith, please formally move and present the motion.
Thank you. I would like to formally move this motion, and I'm pretty confident that this is one that will not be so controversial tonight, as I know that we will all want to provide support for our care leavers. I do feel, just for the fun of it, though, I should stand up, thump the table, or wave a thing angrily at the camera, but I won't. This council notes that the Care Leaver Service in West Sussex supports young people to exit care successfully as they move towards independence. They operate under a clear rule of legislative frameworks, including the Children Leaving Care Act 2000 and the Children and Social Work Act 2017. The 2017 Act sets out 7 parenting principles, that comprise 7 needs that local authorities in England must have regard to. This council further notes that West Sussex Care Leavers Service and increasingly its partners operate in line with these principles, and those principles center around the promotion of physical and mental health and well-being of children and young people, to encourage them to express their views and to take those views into account, to help them gain access to and make the best use of services provided by the local authority and its relevant partners, promote high aspirations and seek to secure the best outcomes, and ensure they are safe and have stability in their home lives, relationships, and in education or work, and ultimately to prepare them for adulthood and independent living. This council welcomes the existing support given by Crawley Borough Council to local care leavers, including the provision of free leisure centre access to K2 to support their health and well-being, which is, a key sort of their physical health will be a key part of their overall health and well-being. In seeking to provide further support for care leavers, this council resolves to engage directly with West Sussex Care Leavers Service to proactively help the service move towards good and into outstanding status through the exploration and implementation of additional initiatives, including potentially providing a shop front facing community base for our care leavers, which would be a communal space to meet with facilities such as laundry, life skills coaching, Wi-Fi, and a place to meet leaving care personal advisors. A space, this could be a dual space, a space for the county council's youth emotional support service for meeting with children from across the county, and apprenticeship or work-based opportunity for any care leaver who wanted to explore this as an alternative employment, education, and training option. I'm aware that there is an amendment, and that is fine. It's a change of a few words. One obviously pointing out that the Care Leaver Service is a statutory service of West Sussex County Council. We, of course, hopefully will all get behind, however, the idea that there are things through opportunities of space in particular that we can support that service for the young care leavers of Crawley. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mughali, please second the motion and confirm if you are wishing to reserve your right to speak later during the debate.
I second the motion, and I would like to speak now, please.
Okay.
There's no doubt that the number of care leavers is going up. My hope is that we include care leavers in the planning and development of services that affect them, as these would be key factors that contribute to helping them, the care leavers, achieve and develop into successful young adults. Thank you.
Thank you. We have an amendment on the notice of motion. This is detailed on page 17 of the supplementary agenda. Councillor Jones, please introduce the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We will be making some slight amendments, or I'm proposing on behalf of the Labour Group some slight amendments to the Conservative motion. But before we do, I wanted to make some observations on this and how it's come forward to this meeting. You know, the statutory duty for corporate parenting sits with West Sussex County Council, but it is a commonly held view that we're all corporate parents, and as borough councillors, we have previously made that commitment. And we very much want to support care leavers here at Crawley Borough Council, not least because we are ahead of most other places at district and council level in the county in what we do, and I have no doubt later that some of my cabinet colleagues will have something to say on the detail of that. But there is something rather curious about how this motion has reached this council. This has clearly been a coordinated effort. We've seen it elsewhere in the county by the cabinet member for children, Jackie Russell, to get this motion to all the boroughs and districts. No doubt in response to their full inspection by Ofsted back in March 2023 with respect to meeting the needs of care leavers. There is a particular focus on housing accommodation, which is being worked through by our officers. These asks seem to be additional and, to my knowledge, have never been raised through the usual dedicated partnership forums, which are usually used to progress requests such as these. In fact, these partnership forums have been bypassed and political mechanisms used instead. And what makes this unusual behaviour, Madam Mayor, is that in my experience of local government, I wouldn't expect this from a councillor or the controlling group of the council responsible. This isn't what you do when you're in charge. You know, when they're the ones in charge of delivering these things at county level, one would usually expect them to make the decision and then arrange for their officers to get in touch with the officers of the councils they wish to work with in partnership and get on with discussing what would be needed at that level. And so perhaps the ruling group at West Sussex need reminding that they're not in opposition yet. No motion is necessary to do that. And I have to observe there seems to be a strange Conservative tactic currently, Madam Mayor, which is extending both to local and national issues, that somehow the state of public services has nothing to do with them. And this is puzzling when they are very much the office holders. So, leading on from what I was saying earlier with the budget, OK, tell your government to give local councils the money needed to do all these things, and we will do them. But in the current circumstances, particularly when it is West Sussex who is funded to be responsible for children in care, not CBC, we can be forgiven for wanting to know a bit more about what is behind this request now. Now, in terms of the facilities ask, a shopfront facing community base and space for the County Council's Youth Emotional Support Service, Crawley benefits from a range of facilities already, including the West Sussex House Project and the Youth Advice Centre Crawley, run through the YMCA Downslink group, among others. We believe some, perhaps many of these asks are already being met, but we really would need to work in more detail with partners to establish. There is nothing, of course, stopping West Sussex County Council putting the resources forward for these things if they believe current provision is not adequate. We're not stopping them. And in terms of the shop front, there may also be those of us who would urge the Conservatives at West Sussex County Council to practice what you preach. You don't need a long memory to remember that they actively got rid of the entire Youth Advice Connection service, which had a shop front in Queen Square and other places, which benefited all young people, including care leavers. You know, and the opposition here may remember we objected to them doing it back at the time. So, in respect to the other request, as a first step, we would raise the profile of care leavers by incorporating this into Crawley Borough Council's recruitment policy and procedure, which is currently being refreshed. And through this amendment, I will be asking the Chief Executive to look into what we can do to action this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sue Mullins, I believe you are seconding the amendment, and in doing so, Please confirm if you are wishing to reserve your right to speak later during the debate.
Yes, I'm seconding the amendment and I reserve my right to speak later.
Thank you very much. I will now open the debate to the floor. Councillor Burgess.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Oh, Councillor Jones, you always sound so suspicious. This is just an opportunity to bring to you something that's on my heart. It's close to my heart, this is. Growing up can be very hard, and we all have been there. And believe me, growing old is very hard too. But can you recall the time you became independent, stepped out into the big wide world, became self-sufficient, became an adult? Remember the tantrums of being an adolescent? Sulks, tantrums, oh, it isn't fair. Most of us had people and family around us, adults who cared and supported us and pointed us in the right direction. Imagine if you had no one close. You were brought up in care. Apart from the staff and the authorities around you, who could you turn to? Having never been in that position, I don't know. This all sounds so official, what we're talking about, but let's get down to what we actually need for our young people in all areas. And so, could we please, now imagine if I've said that, so can we please support these young people as they take their steps to independence? Please accept the notice of motion, give our care leavers a chance, and those of us from a family home chose when we felt ready to leave home. Those in care leave at a set time and need that extra support, one way or the other. Please say yes to this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Irvine.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Obviously, I dare say probably every councillor here tonight would share many of Councillor Burgess's sentiments on this. But we are actually already doing things to help care leavers. And only a week or so ago, before this motion was published, I did receive an email from the head of our strategic housing service asking if I would agree to the amendment of our housing allocation scheme to allow for the allocation of up to 4 council properties per year to care leavers. And of course I immediately emailed back and said fine by me. So I appreciate that this motion does say that the council is doing some good things in relation to care leavers, but perhaps that just wasn't common knowledge. But that is a fact now, that we are in addition allocating council homes to care leavers.
Thank you. Excuse me, thank you. Councillor Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I can certainly assist Councillor Jones in his curiosity as to the origins of the motion, but clearly he is aware that it has gone to, it's been passed by, I think, Mid Sussex District Council and Horsham District Council. So yes, unlike the previous motion, this was a request by Jackie Russell, the County Council's Cabinet Member for Children's Services, and she asked the Conservative groups within West Sussex, whether they would be happy to table this motion. So we had a discussion at our group meeting and we decided that we were happy to table it. I don't know what's happening in the other districts and boroughs, but I know it's been tabled and passed by 2 others. Now there's nothing untoward in this motion, and there's nothing criticising the council. Indeed, Councillor Irvine has just made reference to the fact that the council, we're saying that we welcome the existing support. And actually, Jackie Russell has said to me personally that she is pleased with what Crawley Borough Council does to support, and I'm very happy to go on the record and say that. This motion is not meant to be political in any way. It's an opportunity to highlight the needs of care leavers and for this council to say that we support you. I don't see anything wrong or untoward in that whatsoever in terms of the route why the route has come to council. We all care about care leavers. We know that children in care have disadvantages throughout their lives, and we want to do everything possible we can do to help. Now, Councillor Jones mentioned County Council funding. Well, the pressures, you know, we talked about our budget pressures earlier and £2 million of housing. Well, the county council has got pressures in children's services of £31 million. It's a huge sum of money because of the demand and the complexities of the cases that the county council works with our young people in care. That's a huge sum of money. And it is right that districts and boroughs are well placed in their localities to be able to assist with practical solutions. But the motion is not even dictating what we want this council to do. It's saying, let's please have a look. Is it possible? Let's see what we can do to help. It's very constructive. It is not meant to be critical in any way. So I'm a little bit disappointed at some of his remarks that seem to be a little bit critical, because there is absolutely no criticism meant in this motion whatsoever. It's all about the care leavers and doing what we can to assist them and working in partnership with the county council. Thank you.
Mullins, do you wish to speak? Thank you.
Thanks very much. I actually thought that some people here would actually mention some of the statistics, because I had just a very quick trawl. I couldn't find statistics for West Sussex. They don't seem to publish any. But the country overall, there are 10,000 young people in the country as a whole who leave care every year. That's 10,000 young people. 25% of our homeless population are care leavers. They are people who have been in care at some point in their lives. And 50% of under 21s who come up against the criminal justice system have at some point in their lives been in care. Now, I was a teacher for a very long time. I don't say that very often, but I was a teacher for over 40 years. And in that time, I came up against an awful lot of children who were either in care, out of care, in and out of care, who were in care permanently, and I saw the damage that was done to them. And we've been letting those young people down for many, many years. And that is not just now, that goes way back in time. If I can just say, when you look at statistics, every one of those statistics is a person, a human being, someone with a history, with a life behind them and a life before them. And the children that I met that have been in and out of care were so damaged. They were already damaged because of the background they came from, the homes they came from, the uncaring situations they'd come from. But then the care system let them down all over again. I met one young man. He was quite young. He came into care at the age of 7. He had 6 siblings. One went straight into care from birth. He came from a very, very unfortunate background. He turned up at school ragged, dirty, smelly, his shoes hanging in bits. And it wasn't very long before he went off into care. And we thought, good, something happy is going to happen for him. He's going to have a good life. A few years down the line, we heard about him again. He was in prison. And then he was out of prison. And then he was back in prison. The third time he went in prison, he didn't come out. He committed suicide. He hung himself in a cell. That young boy was let down, not just by his parents and the people who should have loved and cared him, but he was let down by the system. When you talk to young people who've been in care, the first thing they usually say, somebody should have taken me away far sooner. They left me there too long. It damaged me so badly that I couldn't recover. Then you hear them say how many placements they had. I know of one young man who had 30 placements, foster carers. I'm sure they were all really genuine and really helpful and really good people. But if you move somebody 30 times in their young formative years, it is going to damage them completely. And then when they get to 18, suddenly they're out in the big wide world with nobody to support them. And again, they are left to their own devices. They are vulnerable, very vulnerable young people. I know of one young man who was a beautiful looking young boy. He'd been sexually exploited most of his life, I think. When he got to 18, West Sussex in its wisdom placed him in a flat on his own in Brighton. Whatever happened to him in the future, I do not know. And I hate to think. He was already coming out of secure because he was so vulnerable. And yet he was placed in a flat to sink or swim. And so, yes, you are right to bring forward a motion that says, let's support our young people. But we're already letting them down so badly and not looking at where we're going wrong. We shut down all our youth clubs. We had a fantastic system of youth clubs. We had fantastic youth workers. They're all gone. We had the connection shop. That, again, played a great role. It's gone. Then we moved that into the Centenary House. As far as I know, that's long gone. What is there out there? And now the County Council that has the statutory duty to provide is asking us to provide. And yes, we will, and yes, we can, if we're financially possible. And you know that this side, we care just as much as you do about our care leavers, but the whole system needs looking at big, from top to bottom.
Thank you. There are no further speakers. Councillor Miller-Smith, do you wish to use your right to reply? And in doing so, please formally move the notice of motion.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I would like to formally move the motion now, and just to say that I appreciate that we can look into supporting what's effectively two things. One, a community base for the services to use for young people, and also welcome the opportunity to look at opportunities within the employment, education, and training. I would also say that one of the things that we should always be doing, I think, when we meet with our young people in and around town, in service or not, is looking at opportunities for them. And not all opportunities are, Councillor Mullins talks about different sort of services, but many opportunities are available for young people in a variety of different ways, some of which I mentioned in the policing motion around things that the Police and Crime Commissioner is funding, a variety of different wonderful programs for our children. Our care leavers are particularly vulnerable, and so I'm sure we all are happy to support seeing how we can provide any support we can provide to the care leaver service. Thank you.
Thank you. I call for a vote on the proposed amendment to Notice of Motion 3. Support for care leavers as set out on page 17 of the order paper. This is for the amendment. Can I have... Okay, I just wanted to double check.
Thank you.
Okay. Now I call for a vote on substantive notice of motion 3, support for care leavers as amended. Thank you very much. The next item is Councillors' question time. We have 30 minutes for this item, and we will start with the written questions submitted by Councillors Crow, Hellier and Lanza respectively, and as detailed in the supplementary agenda on page 9, which includes the responses. Councillor Crow, do you wish to ask a supplementary question?
No, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hellier, do you wish to ask a supplementary question? Thank you very much. Councillor Lanza, do you wish to ask a supplementary question?
No, Madam Mayor, but I have a verbal question for the leader.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, right. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So my question is to Councillor Jones. So I refer him to the full council meeting, first of all, of 22nd of February this year, where Councillor Piggott asked a question on the possibility of implementing a searchable database for tree preservation orders. That question wasn't answered by the time of the 29th of March full council meeting, and I asked Councillor Jones about that unanswered question. At the time, there were several other unanswered questions which have subsequently been responded to, but I'm advised by Councillor Piggott that he, at this point, still has not received a response to that question, tabled in February and reminded in March. Could he please commit to providing an answer, either himself or via another member of the Cabinet.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Naturally, the Council, the Democratic Service Officers, the officers, the Cabinet do try to take account of the questions that have been asked at this meeting and for them to be answered. This has happened before. Councillor Lanza has raised this before, and we did put in a system to try and address this. However, what I think is a bit petty is to wait until the next full council to say you haven't got an answer to something. I mean, clearly, I want all my cabinet members to answer their questions, and I want them to get back. And if they haven't, it seems like it's common sense to me that you bring this to our attention. But all I can say is I will have a word with both the cabinet members and Democratic Services to check that we're confident that these things are being logged, and also perhaps suggest to Councillor Piggott, if he doesn't get an answer, he actually chases it himself rather than tries to do it through you, and also to any of your group, quite honestly.
Councillor Pritchard. Sorry?
Yeah. We have, if you just say question time has opened and Councillor Lanza was the first question.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, we have, sorry, we have actually started and Councillor Lanza was the first question. He did indicate that he had a question to ask. Okay.
Yes, please.
So I'll now open the floor to any members wishing to ask a question of either Cabinet members or committee chairs. If so, can you please indicate now? Councillor Pritchard.
Yes, question for the leader, Madam Mayor. I saw in the news your letter and interview about the issues coming forward with the potential influx of Chagosian people into Crawley. Indeed, you mentioned it earlier in this meeting. And in that same report, our local MP seems to suggest we're not going to get that very many. Is that true, and are you happy with the National Conservative Government's response so far, particularly in terms of the significant impact this will have on the Council?
Thank you, Councillor Pritchard, for your question. I have to say that the current government is handling immigration issues and asylum seekers' applications very poorly, and they've added thousands of additional Chagosians to this with full British passport rights through their own legislation. And to date, I've been advised there have been 6,600 applications for British citizenship, of which 3,200 have been approved, and 600 of these applications are from individuals already in the UK, and 300 of these have been approved. Now, based on the numbers today, the Foreign and Commonwealth Office's estimate of 3,500 to 5,000 people is highly credible, as is their assumption that the majority will look to Crawley. But the government undertook no impact analysis when launching the scheme and has taken no responsibility for helping to manage this migration, which could mean up to a 3% increase in the population of Crawley based on 4,000 arrivals in a town with a current population of 120,000. That's massive. Yes, it might be righting a historical injustice, which is well documented, but we here at Crawley Borough Council, we're not a large metropolitan council. We can't be expected to be left to deal with what amounts to an international situation, and that should be clear to the government. And they keep saying that these new burdens are funded, Councillor, but if we haven't been given the money and not given any indication it's forthcoming, then it means nothing. It's just empty words. And to say that there aren't going to be many, we have some Chagosians beginning to turn up at the town hall now, but it's taken this long for many of the applications to be processed. But the government's known this for what's coming on for nearly a year. And I've been involved in local government now for over 20 years, and I've never seen the levels of paralysis and incompetence from a national government, even to respond to urgent matters, than we've seen in the last couple of years, and it's absolutely astounding.
Do you have a supplementary question? No. Thank you very much. Councillor Burgess.
I believe my question is to Councillor Noyce. It's about fly tipping. We had to talk earlier on about policing and one thing, and the underlying problems of crime. And I think one of these is the areas that we create if we don't keep them clean and tidy. I'm not criticising it, by the way, I'm just stating a fact. So my question is, how can we have all the fly posting removed that's appeared throughout the town, and how can we stop it from happening in the future? A simple signage, perhaps? I can't see we could prosecute, even though they're breaking planning regulations, but can we do anything about the fly tipping, which has appeared in Crawley over the months and has remained there and will probably grow when other circuses and what have you come in? So, thank you.
Fly tipping, which is in place. Yeah, okay, I will have to look into that with the officers, and I'll get a response back to you, Brenda. Thank you very much.
Do you have a supplementary question? Thank you. Councillor Sivaraja.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to ask Councillor Chris Mullin regarding the tree planting in Tilgate Park. Will you be able to tell us about this more?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I can tell you about it because it's something that I'm very pleased about, and in a personal way a little bit disappointed because I won't be in town on the day that we do it, so I won't be able to go up there myself. But on the community tree planting at Tilgate Park is on the 28th of October, starting at 9 a.m. So you better take a packed breakfast with you and get up there with your spade. But no, it's a really good thing. The main trees that are going to be put in by the staff. The centre of the tree planting will be an oak tree, and the whips, or the small spindly trees, will be done by members of the public, and encouraged to do so. Obviously, when you turn up for this, you should have suitable clothing, especially as it's turned a bit colder now, and some sturdy footwear. It will be a little bit of piercing of the ground to get the roots in for them. But I think what this is part of the Lake Queen's green canopy idea that came from the palace, and we're taking part in that, and it's quite important. It's also an excellent environmental activity, and as you know, trees are healthy for human beings as they help us to breathe. So there will be 30 standard trees put in, and the aim is maybe up to 500 whips to be put in by the public in the area, and it will be a selection of native species. So we want to have plants that are proper to this land put in, and so they'll probably be broadleaf type trees when they grow. So it's a really excellent programme. It's run by Justin Roberts, who's our tree man in Crawley, and he'd be very, very pleased to hear from any members that would like to go up there and join in. And I hope that we do get a bit of publicity through our department for it, because it's an excellent environmental activity, and it gives a little bit of healthy outdoor activity to our residents as well. So go along, plant a tree and get fit. Be good for you.
You won't be there. Do you have a supplementary question? Thank you very much. As the meeting has not been completed within the 2.5 hours, I will put it to a vote whether the council wishes to continue for a further 30 minutes. Agreed? Is that agreed? No. Okay, can we have a vote then, please? All those in favour of extending for 30 minutes? I don't know. Yeah. Can you keep your hands raised, please? Those against? We will extend for a further 30 minutes. Thank you. Right, next councillor is Councillor McCarthy, please.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad we voted to extend a little bit. I thought I was going to be the first one for the chop. So my question's for Councillor Ian Irvine, Cabinet Member for Housing. I welcome your comments earlier regarding increased engagement with residents at Milton Mount Flats. However, residents at the flats have experienced ongoing issues with the new water pumping station, with multiple failures being reported, no water, as well as incidents of high pressure spikes causing leaks. The water pumping station makes up the largest amount of money in this tranche of repair work, so these incidents are upsetting local residents, sort of rubbing salt into the wound. Can you, as the Cabinet Member for Housing, establish the root cause of the failures with the pumping station in order to prevent any further issues? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, and I'm aware of the problems that arise at Milton Mount Flats from time to time, and thank you for raising it, although I was already aware of the problems because I do get regular briefings on the matter. We do have a committed and dedicated team of officers who deal with Milton Mounts. Part of the problem, I think, there is that the flats were built in about 1968, not by us. I think they were built by the Commission for the New Towns. They were built using a system building concept. And, you know, they were built a long time ago. But anyway, that doesn't help the residents there. What would help the residents there is to make sure that the water is on. They don't have any peaks and troughs, so that they don't go without shower or water for anything else. So I can't guarantee that I personally can get to the root cause of the problem, but I will raise this at my next briefing meeting to make sure that we have the best qualified people within the council to establish exactly what the problem is and how to resolve it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ayling.
This is for Councillor Chris Mullins. Can you please let the Chamber know how the wellbeing truck is doing around Crawley, please? Thank you.
Yes, I can. First of all, I know Michael Jones and I and some other councillors, we went out to see this when it was first introduced. It's in its first year, and the idea was really to take the wellbeing service that we have in K2 out to the people, out to maybe harder to reach people, take it into the localities and to introduce the wellbeing service to them, and to be able to give them wellbeing advice, whether it be about their diets, whether they might have a diabetic problem and what, you know, they should cover that, all sorts of advice that they can get, which is really good for them, and it will help them to be better and look after themselves more, and in fact, I'm just trying to look at some figures here. I mean, we got to say thank you to West Sussex County Council and the government a little bit, unusual for me, but we did spend £83,000 odd on putting this vehicle together. So it's quite a complex vehicle, but it's a three-way partnership, which was good because the wellbeing service is funded partly by West Sussex County Council and Crawley Borough Council, and there was a government chip in as well. So we paid about just over a third, I think, of the cost of it. So it's really quite good. The health screening goes on. We do wellbeing appointments. We talk about COVID and vaccinations with people. We talk about healthy lifestyles, and we try to take the vehicle out twice weekly. You know, obviously the staff have got other things to do the rest of the week, so it's quite well used. And we also, if you go to events, you will see that it's at events. So when we had the Gay Pride weekend, for example, it was there at that event as well. So all of the events that go on, there's an opportunity for us to put the vehicle there and to talk to people, and so that's very, very good. When we initially opened it in March, we got 50 interactions, but since then, and looking back on what we've done so far, we've had 650 people come to the vehicle to asking for advice. So it's actually been very, very successful, and people are taking it very seriously and want to be involved in it. So I think it's something to congratulate all the parties involved. It's well-being, which is good. It's about preventative medicine, because if we get to people before they get too ill and we give them advice, we can stop them getting iller. So preventative medicine is vitally important, and this is what we're doing with this vehicle. So I'm really pleased that we have this vehicle in Crawley. It's something to be proud of, and I look forward to it continuing to do the excellent work that it's doing.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor? Thank you. Councillor Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I won't talk the clock down. My question's to the leader. I noticed, and by the way, I haven't spoken with him about it, but I noticed that our Member of Parliament, Henry Smith, had written to you about requesting that this council commemorates Holocaust Memorial Day every year, and I think that is a request that has a particular merit. So my question to you is, have you responded, or what is your response likely to be if you haven't yet responded? Thank you.
I think the microphone hasn't had the change of role update yet.
Oh, good. All right. It's a miracle. Thank you. Thank you for your question, Councillor Crowe. I anticipated that it might come up tonight, so I will be responding to the MP, but I thought that the council should know the response first. The Holocaust is undoubtedly one of the darkest chapters in humanity's history, and I'm very open to the council supporting an event to mark Holocaust Memorial Day in the new year. Discussions did take place towards the end of 2020 regarding a tree planting ceremony, along with a plaque unveiling in the Memorial Gardens. And the first plan was for January 2021, but unfortunately the tree planting had to be cancelled due to COVID. And then, although attempts were made to do it instead for January 2022, infection rates were rising again at the end of 2021, so again, the ceremony had to be postponed. This very much could be picked up for January 2024, and I would say to you, and also any members of the council or the public or press listening, that Crawley Borough Council would like to reach out in particular to any local residents who are Jewish or would otherwise be interested to take part in such a ceremony, as we would very much like this to be something that has that strong community involvement and that we can do in years to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just quickly, firstly, thank the leader for his response and say that I very much welcome what he said and that the council will be looking to commemorate. And I do like the idea of reaching out to the Jewish community who are particularly been suffering at this time. Thank you. No question, really.
Councillor Belbin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a question for Councillor Nawar. At July's full council, Councillor Crowe submitted a written question asking why the Queen Square expensive fountain jets have been out of order for some time, and when did you think that they'd be back working? In your reply, you said not only should the works on site be completed by the end of September, but regular meetings were being held with every contractor to see if the works programme could be shortened. Yet here we are in the second half of October, after a spell of exceptionally warm weather, and still the fountain jets are not working. Please, can you explain why?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Thanks for your question. I think I expected that once again, as Leader said. I think this is the question. You might have seen, I think some of the members might have seen in the town centre, the area is now kind of body or signs over there that repair work is actually in progress. But as with everything at the moment in the world, we have been difficulty with the supply chain issues with some of the parts for the fountains, which has now been procured. That has led to some slippage at the time, but I've been reassured again. I did ask this. I've been regularly following it. It will be works will be completed near future, and probably yes, summer is gone, but we still might have a test run done, and we might be able to see that all together soon. So that's where we are with that. It's definitely in progress. All three contractors are in sync. There's a little bit slippage, but due to the supply chain. Thank you.
Icicles in the Queen Square maybe in time for Christmas, but you also said that the council did not delay the work by doing any suing of the contractors, etc. And obviously then this work wasn't covered by any warranty or insurance. So I have to ask, I'm afraid, what are the costs to date of fixing the fountain, please?
I haven't got the numbers at my hand at this point in time, but I will check and reply to you. But given that, as we said earlier as well, because it's quite a complicated contract negotiation, that suing the different companies and everything, but our priority was to get the fountains fixed ASAP, and that's the route we thought it would be better for residents and for our town as well. So once I've got this information for you, I'll get back to you in this one as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jaggard.
Thank you. I'm a bit baffled about the recent HASC report. So please can the Chair of OSC explain the minute 9 on page 75? It's the data relating to adult services public health, where it says, for example, adult services, 12.5% 4 measures green, 37.5% 2 measures amber, 50% 2 measures as red. The minutes give no explanation of what this data means, who presented it, what it relates to. Previously, the HASC reports have been really quite interesting and clear, but this is actually just meaningless without any sort of explanation of what's going on. So can you please help us out? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't know that question was coming, and I haven't got the paperwork in front of me, but I will have a look at it and I will give you a written reply. Thank you.
Yeah, it's not just the adult services one, it's the whole of that section with the public health as well, because it's just data, it's just statistics and no information at all. Right, okay.
I can't look at it, but I will look at it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. For the leader, Councillor Jones, please, also about the Chagos applications. I believe you said 300 something citizenship ceremonies have taken place. Can I just ask before I finish, is that what you had said? Just to can you just qualify that point?
I think I can clarify that I said to date there's been 6,600 applications for British citizenship, of which 3,200 have been approved, and 600 of these applications are from individuals already in the UK, and 300 of those had already been approved.
No, I needed that clarified before I actually asked my question, which is, so of the approvals who got the citizenship, how many people have approached Crawley Borough Council as of now for a housing application?
I haven't got exact figures for you, Councillor Miller-Smith. It is not a nil figure, that is all I can tell you. I have had it reported back. I would have to seek advice as to the precise numbers. I think it's approximately 7 as of last week, but that is the very beginning. This isn't that this has been going on for a long time. A lot of these, a lot of the people who've applied have only just finally got through the whole process of application. It's taken the government departments a long time to do the processing, and I think also, aside from that, they've then had to wait for citizenship ceremonies. So they're done in batches. So, but this as I said is the very start, and this is where we're starting to see it begin. Yep.
No, thank you very much. Councillor Lanza.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Question to Councillor Chris Mullins. When he and I and Councillor Jones launched the Health and Wellbeing bus in Queen Square, did he appreciate the coincidence of the Health and Wellbeing colours used for the balloons at the launch bearing a close resemblance to the Irish tricolour?
Yes, he did.
Well, when I was a kid, I ended up in hospitals for a while, and I always remember all the nurses were Irish, and a lot of the doctors were Irish. It's not quite so now, but the foundation of the health service relied greatly on Irish people. You'd be quite surprised, as did most of our building and our canals. So the most underrated people probably, certainly in Crawley, but probably in the country, as the historic work put in by Irish people in this country. It's been quite an amazing amount of work put in. So I appreciated the colours on those balloons that day, because it's about time that we put some sort of statue up to the Irish that built Crawley.
Thank you very much. Do you have a supplementary question?
I think Councillor Mullins' response, and I think his response had the effect of making my question look as though it was planted, but it wasn't.
Thank you. I call upon the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Kiran Khan, to move receipt of the reports of the meetings as set out in Agenda Item 7 on page 35.
Thank you. I move that the reports of the Planning Committee, Overview and Scrutiny Commission, Audit Committee, Cabinet Governance Committee and Licence Committee be received. Is that agreed?
There are no further items for debate, and as there is also no further supplementary items of business, I declare the meeting of the Council now closed. and good evening to everybody. Good night.